Meeting has started.
Thank you very much, Anne. Okay, my usual announcement, if everyone can hear me. Today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by way of the Council's internet site. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the Council. Proposed public speakers have been made aware of the broadcasting arrangements prior to the meeting. Would members please keep their microphones and cameras turned up, unless invited to speak by the chair to contribute to the meeting, and please remember to switch off your microphone and camera when you have finished. Also, could you ensure that you refrain from using any mobile devices during the planning committee, and any mobile phones, iPads are switched off or on silent. Thank you very much. First item on the agenda, apologies. Anne, are there any?
Sorry, Chair, we've got Councillor Richard White and Councillor William Reid. They've both got IT issues.
Okay. Thank you very much, Neil. Declarations of interest. Are there any members wishing to make declarations of interest, and if so, on which matter? No? Okay. The minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of January. Would somebody propose that a correct record?
True record, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is the seconder?
Yeah, second.
Thank you very much, James. Okay. Could I just make a few announcements before we plough on, because there's been 4 late representations and they have been very late representations, so I don't want to get confused, and I certainly don't want the committee to get confused. Before I do that, James Clark, if I could just announce, we'll leave the meeting about 11:45. He's got a very important meeting to go to, so he's apologised for that. And with the late representations, there was one for Rogerstone for the Old Oak Stave, and it appeared that that might not again be on the agenda, but it will be on the agenda. I'll confirm that, because there's public speakers and the council has indicated she wishes to speak, so please remain at the meeting. The first, if I could move then to the first item on the agenda, which is application number 20-0748. The ward is Liswerry, and the proposal, the site is the Usmouth Power Station, West Nash Road, Nash, Newport, and the presenting officer is Joanne Davidson. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. I can confirm that yesterday afternoon officers received a holding direction from Welsh Government in relation to application 20-0748 for Usmouth Power Station. What that means is that the local authority is barred from favourably determining the application at the current time. And the reason for that is because the Welsh ministers have been asked to call in the application, and they require time to consider that request. Now, Welsh Government are advising us that they aim to determine call-in requests within 21 days of receipt. And so at the moment, Chair, officers will recommend that this item be deferred. And we only present it back once we have the outcome of Welsh Government's consideration of the call-in request.
Okay.
That's it, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Joanne. Does the committee understand what Joanna said there, and what the outcome of that would be?
Yes,
The committee. The committee has been asked to acknowledge the Welsh Assembly Government statement, and do we accept the officer's current recommendation on this application? So,
Accepted, Chair.
Neil, I don't know. Yeah, sorry, Neil, if you could organise some vote on that.
Sorry, Chair, my system was frozen then. Okay, so Councillor Charles Ferris, please.
Pardon me, does that mean that the Welsh Government will make the decision, or will they hand it back to us to make the decision after 21 days?
Joanne?
Okay, we don't know yet, Councillor Ferris. So all they've done at the moment is issue us with a holding direction, which means we cannot favourably determine this application at the moment. And Welsh Government require time to consider the call-in requests. So they will either at the end of that decide to call it in for Welsh ministers to determine, or they will confirm that they do not wish to call it in and we can go ahead and determine it. But right now we don't know what's going to be the outcome, which is why we're asking members to defer it this morning.
We basically have no real choice, do we? We can't say we will hear it. I mean, so the only response we could give would be that we agree with the deferral. Am I right in thinking that? You're nodding, Joanne.
Well, that is our recommendation to you, Councillor. You can, as a committee, decide to hear it if you want today, but it's not what we would recommend to you, bearing in mind the holding direction that has been issued. Oh. You cannot favourably determine the application today.
Right. Okay. Well, in that case, in my opinion, we should go with the status quo. We should defer.
Thank you, Councillor Ferris. Back to you, Neil.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Charles Ferris, please.
Well, agree to defer.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Jordan.
Agree to defer.
Thank you. Councillor John Guy.
I agree to defer.
Thank you. Councillor Tracy Holyoke.
Agree.
Thank you. Councillor James Clark.
Agree.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Berry.
Agree to defer. But while I'm on, can I just tell you I'm having problems? My screen is flicking, so if I don't, if I don't come in straight away, it's a computer error. But right now I'm fine.
No problem. Thanks, Councillor Berry. Councillor Trevor Watkins, please.
Agree to defer.
Thank you. And yourself, please, Chair.
Agree to defer.
Thank you. All the committee have fought to defer the application. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you, committee. Item 2 on the agenda is on pages 78 to 81. It's application number 20-0995. The site is Jasminium Station Road, Llanwern. Ward is Llanwern. Ward councillor is Martin Kellaway. The presenting officer is Joanne Davidson. And there's a public speaker, Mr. Lloyd Jones, the agent. So, Joanne, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen as usual. Okay, hopefully you can see that, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the application is for the erection of a 2-storey side extension and widening of an existing access. Jasminium is located in the Llanwern village area off Station Road. We refer in the description to it being a resubmission. I'll mention this again in a moment. So the site we're looking at is outlined in red. As I say, here's Station Road, the turning that leads off down into Bishton Village here. Existing and proposed block plans, and hopefully you can all see the changes that are proposed clearly on there. So where my cursor is now is the extension that we're being asked to consider. And then, as you can see, the difference here with the access, it's being widened. I should say as well, this application has been called to committee by the local councillor. Okay, existing floor plan, proposed floor plan. So the existing property is a single-storey semi-detached residence, and there is the existing elevations, and this is the proposed elevation. So the proposal is for a 2-storey side extension on a single-storey semi-detached unit. Okay, I mentioned at the start this was a resubmission, so what I've put on this slide is what we have previously refused for very similar reasons to the recommended refusal this time, i.e. design-based reason. So this is the 2019 application that we refused. Here's the 2020 application, or the first 2020 application we refused. And there's the second 2020 application we refused. You can see very, very similar to the proposal that we're looking at now. I'll take you back to that. So that's the one we're looking at now. And so officers are recommending refusal again on design grounds. To go into that in a little more detail, here's the aerial photo. I explained where it was positioned. So here's Llanwern Village, Station Road, the turning down to Bishton Village. Here's the property as it currently stands. As I say, it is a semi-detached single-storey residence. And the reason why it's going to be 2-storey on the side is hopefully you can see there's a change in levels off this gable end. And the applicant intends to make the most of that in terms of the floor space in the extension. So again, you may be able to see it slightly better there. Again, some different views from Station Road. You can see how close the unit is to the highway. So it's going to be prominent, there is no doubt. Some others, they're just looking at the pair of semis as a whole. They are asymmetrical, the existing semis, but officers are concerned about the size of the proposed extension, the fact that it is 2-storey. I'll take you back to those elevations again. The fact that there's no consistency in terms of the levels of the fenestration detailing because of this change. So you can see the ground floor windows, you know, they don't align, and we've got quite a prominent gable feature here that bears no resemblance to the rest of the semi front facade. So this is entirely a design-based refusal. In relation to the widening of the access, officers are satisfied with that. The existing access is not great in terms of visibility, but the fact that they're widening it, we don't feel in itself makes matters worse. So the reason for refusal is a design reason, Chair, and just I've included here an extract from our adopted supplementary planning guidance, which is a key reference point for us when we're looking at design and side extensions. So again, I've mentioned scale. The adopted supplementary planning guidance is clear. It should respect the scale of the original house. It should appear subordinate to the parent building. Minimum setback of 1 metre, which isn't achieved here. I'll leave that on the screen a second so members can look at that. But Chair, we recommend refusal for the reason we've expressed in the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joanne. Public speaker is Mr. Lloyd Jones, the agent. Mr. Jones.
Yes, Chair, just 1 moment.
Okay.
Okay. Right, here we go. I'll just, start.
Good morning, Mr. Jones.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Chair. I have been instructed by the applicant, Mr. McCarthy, to speak in support of this application today. and thank you for allowing me to address the committee. As members will note, there's been a number of plan applications that have been made at the property, and the applicant has tried to engage positively with the council to address the concerns raised and is disappointed with the recommendation before you today. The applicant has a young family, and given the high costs involved with moving home, the only realistic option for the applicant is to provide an extension that will provide much needed living space on the ground floor, as well as an additional bedroom to create a 3-bedroom family home. The existing dwelling is semi-detached and benefits from an extensive frontage onto Station Road. It does not enjoy any visual symmetry with the adjacent property. Within the surrounding area, there are a variety of architectural styles. The extension has been designed so that it appears as a high-quality addition in the streetscape. Paragraph 7.3 of the committee report references that house extensions and the domestic buildings SPG and cites 2 key points within that document. The first being that side extensions need to be as sensitive as they can eliminate lines of symmetry in pairs of semi-detached houses. In this case, it should be noted that there's no existing visual symmetry to protect, as both houses are already visually very different. In relation to the second key point, the SPG describes that side extensions can fill spaces between dwellings, and that such spaces are valuable because they create visual rhythm of solids and voids. However, such circumstances are not relevant to this case. An important point that has been missed is that to the south of the extension, there is a significant gap of some 100 metres to the nearest dwelling. This buffer ensures that there is no loss of visual rhythm or the creation of any substantial solid voids that would be harmful to the character of the street scene. The scheme has also been designed to provide a degree of subservience, as a small set down and set back off the front elevation of the dwelling is proposed. Given the levels of the site, it will present as a single story when reading it with the existing and attached dwelling that are already materially very different. The roof shape will match the form of the existing roof, and the introduction of a small gable feature is sought to pick up on existing architectural features in the dwelling. Given that the extension is less than half the width of the existing dwelling, it is considered to be an appropriate addition. The applicant has revised the plans from a previous refusal and altered the fenestration so the design of the windows replicates the design and style of the existing windows. In summary, my client believes that there are compelling reasons that allow members to approve this application that will provide much needed accommodation for the applicant and his young family. The design is one that is of a high quality and the site's context is important. The dwelling is not located on a street scene where there's one architectural style. The dwelling is materially different to the attached property, and to the south there is a significant gap to the nearest neighbour. Given these factors, the proposal will not have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the property and surrounding area. It is considered to comply with policies GP2 and GP6 of the LDP. My client respectfully requests that the application is approved today by committee. Thank you for listening, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you very much. We then move to committee. And if you bear in mind the problem we've got with hands up. Committee. Charles Ferris, yes, that'll do for me.
Yeah, thanks. Chair, I thought when reading the report, I mean, I think it would have benefited if we'd had some more photographs in the report of the actual place. But I was impressed with the idea that the extension shouldn't be larger than the host building, which is a bungalow. So I came away from reading the report thinking that they were going to put a 2-story building on the side of a bungalow, but looking at the design, it seems to blend in an acceptable way to my way of thinking. Unfortunately, we seem to be in the realms of taste here, don't we? I mean, what one person might consider attractive, another might not. But from what I've seen, it seems, to my mind, acceptable. It doesn't seem to be sticking out like a sore thumb. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferris.
Chair, my hand waving system is not working.
Okay, Councillor Berry, you're next then.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. The problem with the drawings that are being shown to us is that they are face on. It would have been nice to have seen a plan of it, because it might go back excessively, and therefore from one angle will look like a huge addition to what is relatively normal home. So I don't get that picture. It's a shame.
Okay. Well, perhaps Joanne Davidson can answer that when she comes back in. Councillor Jordan and then Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, Joanne, can we see that aerial view again, please, of the property, please, if possible?
Chair, would you like me to show that now?
Yes, by all means, yeah.
Oh, could we sort of try and zoom in a bit more to that, or no? I'm just thinking about, like Councillor Berry said, you know, with the size, maybe the size of it, could it maybe extended backwards more and a bit more to sort of like to fit in with the same height as the house? Do you mean?
I can hopefully try and help answer that. So maybe I went through some of these plans a little too hastily. So let me just take you back to the floor plan proposed. The setback is, we actually confirm it in the officer assessment, is 1.5 centimetres. That setback from the front elevation is 1.5 centimetres, and the set down referred to by the public speaker is 2.5 centimetres. So if we look at the proposed, there you go. The elevation that you'll see as you, I don't know, come from the golf course at Llanwern, as if you're going towards the one-way system, will be this side elevation here. So you can see they're not going back, and the reason for that is, or certainly my understanding of the reason for that is, if you look at the block plan, it does look like, as Councillor Jordan has suggested, they could push back and get a better setback that accords with our supplementary planning guidance. But in reality, and I'm not sure whether some of the photographs show this, yeah, in reality there's an embankment at the back. Hopefully you can see that.
Yeah.
And so what looks like a lot of potentially flat space at the back isn't really there, and I think that's probably why the applicant has tried to, in addition to the internal layout, of course, which will be relevant to them, is probably why the applicant has tried to align the extension with the existing single-storey residence. Does that answer the query?
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah, you know, it just seemed like, you know, if you can keep, because it looks like he's gone onto the back of the house, he's run it from the back right the way across, you know, to keep in line with the back of the house.
Yes.
You know, yeah. You know, this was, I thought, you know, because it's been refused 3 times on maybe the front of the design of the property. Maybe if he could have alleviated more and done a bit more wider, maybe, and to keep in line with the house, the windows, I expect. I think that might be a lot better for him, really.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, there is an acceptable or potentially acceptable option here, but we haven't got to that point yet, and it's possible we won't, because the applicant has a certain expectation in terms of the space they want to achieve with the extension, which is also understandable, of course.
Joanne?
And then also, sorry, you know, with the site, with this 2-story extension, of what sort of windows or things there have they got on the bottom? Because if it must be more, they have to go down steps into the as the property is. You know, I didn't see no extended windows or anything, or is that with the double, like the bifolding doors maybe at the front there? Is it for access of windows? Is it?
This is the proposed front extension. So yes, you're right. I mean, they're going to need some internal steps down to the lower level. And one of the concerns that we expressed is how this elevation relates to the existing single-storey residence in terms of the fenestration detailing and this prominent glazed gable feature, because as you saw from the photos, the existing residence is very traditional and quite modest in its style and its size. This is the what we would call the side elevation. So this is, I don't know if I've got a photograph. This is what you would see here on this end.
Bifolding doors and going out onto the garden, which gives them the light and the space. Right, okay.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Joanne. John Guy and then Carmel Townsend. Councillor Guy.
Okay. To that in some respects, but I would have thought if they took everything into consideration, there's something there for them, but it's a matter of them making a compromise. That's what we got to say.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor Townsend and Councillor Ferris.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Joanne, have there been many complaints or a complaint from the nearby neighbour, next door neighbour?
I don't believe so, Chair, but I'm just going to check the published report. No comments from neighbours, and the Community Council has said they have no comments either.
Okay, thanks, Joanne.
Thank you. Councillor Ferris.
Thanks, Chairman. Looking at the photograph that you put up, Joanne, there's quite a nice looking bay tree there in the corner of the building, isn't it? There, if you could get that photograph back with the tree. Yeah, that one there. Now, does that act basically as a break in the line of the windows? So if the extension went on, really the disparity in the fenestration, what a lovely term to use, the disparity in the window alignment would be sort of broken by the retention of that tree. Or am I right in thinking that?
Sorry, do you mean this?
Yeah, so that breaks the line of that breaks the window line, doesn't it? Effectively.
Well, I mean, obviously you could say that, but the extension will be seen alongside this feature here, because there's the plant that you're referring to here.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it would entirely mitigate the concern. And obviously there's no control over them keeping that either. But you know, if I can understand your point, it breaks up the existing front elevation, which is, as the public speaker suggested, quite wide. I suspect because it has been extended in the past when you look at it compared to this one next door. So it has been lengthened. It's been lengthened with an extension that is comparable with the old cottage. I don't exactly know what the history is, but it's been extended in a sensitive fashion. Obviously, this one is different because primarily it is that two-storey element, the break in the fenestration sill and heads compared to the existing levels. And as I say, the gable that glazed gable feature, which, you know, you either like it or you don't, but overall we're of the view it doesn't comply with our adopted supplementary planning guidance. But members are you know, can obviously take a contrary view to officers on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other committee member wish to speak?
Chair.
Councillor Perry?
Yeah. Are there properties opposite this on the other side of the road?
Sorry, I'm working on a bit of a delay. Sorry. Yes.
You're lucky. My system's going to pot almost. Go on.
Yes, there are properties on the other side.
And have we had any representation from them?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Thank you, Joanne. Any other committee member? Okay. Are you prepared to vote?
Yes, Chair.
Yes,
Yeah.
Chair.
Okay. The recommendation of the officers is to refuse this application.
Chair,
So, Jason,
could we just be clear on the proposal?
I do apologise. Joanne, legal officer, did you wish to come in?
Chair, yes, Chair. We need a proposer for the recommendation and a seconder. For
Okay.
vote. Yeah.
Okay. Right, we're at the stage committee where we need to decide, and so will somebody propose something, please?
Chair, I propose we accept the recommendation of the planning officers.
Okay.
Chair, I second that.
There's a seconder. So it's been proposed.
Propose to accept the officer's recommendations.
All right, it's been proposed and seconded that the committee accept the officer's recommendation, which is to refuse the application. Neil, could you organise the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Charles Ferris, please.
Against the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Jordan.
Yeah, against the proposal.
Councillor Guy.
For the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Tracy Holyoke.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor James Clark.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Berry.
For.
Councillor Trevor Watkins.
For the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Carmel Townsend.
Against.
Thank you. And yourself, please, Chair.
For.
Thank you. That's 6, 4 and 3 against, Chair.
Okay, so the officer's recommendation is carried. Thank you very much. We now move to item 3, which is on page 82 to 91 of your paperwork. The application number is 20-1110. The site is 9 Bachelor Road. The ward members are Councillors Deb Davis, Mark Spencer and Graham Berry. Presenting officer Joanne Davidson. There's a public speaker, Mr. Lloyd Jones, the agent, and the ward member, Councillor Deb Davis, wishes to speak. And
Chair?
Yes.
As being as that's in my ward and I'm a voting member here, I think it only fair that I withdraw from the meeting.
Okay. Okay. That request is accepted. Thank you very much, Councillor Berry. We then move to Joanne Davidson again, the presenting officer. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen again. Sorry, I'll move you on. Okay, the next application then is at 9 Bachelor Road. The application is for the change of use from a dwelling to a 6-person house in multiple occupation, or a C4 class use. The site is off Chepstow Road, so the site is outlined in red on this ordnance survey, and this building here is Eveswell Junior and Infant School, just for context, with St John's Road running around here. Okay, the existing layout, this is a large dwelling at present, arranged over 3 floors, as you can see from the existing floor layouts. Not much is changing in terms of the proposed layout, but I'll show you that. So we'll still have accommodation arranged over those 3 floors. Here's an aerial shot. We like to include these just so members can perhaps put it into that sort of perspective. As I say, Bachelor Road running up here, it's actually on a fairly significant slope. So as you turn right into it off Chepstow Road, you go up a relatively steep incline to this whole area, which is elevated in comparison. You'll hopefully see that on these photographs we'll show you. So the property itself is mid-terrace. As you could see, a sizable traditional property. The main issue, committee won't be surprised about this, is parking. So you'll see that the officer assessment has undertaken the usual 15% SPG concentration assessment, but based on the representations received, we consider highways as the primary concern of residents and other objectors on this application. So what I've done here is reproduce the highway comments. They're also in your reports. So what this does is confirm to us what the parking shortfall would be as a consequence of the change of use. So the existing dwelling has 7 bedrooms, which the SPG states requires 3 off-road parking spaces in an ideal world. The proposal will generate an additional parking demand of 4 spaces. And as you could tell from the photographs I've shown you so far, there is no off-road parking currently, and there's no off-road parking potential for the proposed use. A parking survey has been submitted, as we would ordinarily expect, by the applicant, and that demonstrates that there is sufficient on-street parking space available in the area to accommodate the additional 4 spaces that the SPG expects. So we've got some photographs here of the area taken during the daytime, and you can see again, as we would expect, on-street parking is in demand because many of the residents have no other option. On this photograph, the application site is on the right-hand side. Again, looking up that slope, so the application this time is on the left-hand side, showing constraints to on-street parking. And then what we've done here is, as officers gone out at different times, just to observe changes in on-street parking patterns. These are all during the current lockdown, so we could reasonably expect there to be high demand for on-street parking. So you can see that based on these photos, there is high demand. Some more there that we've taken on nearby streets where there appears to be potentially less demand. Okay, and then down on to the Chepstow Road, a relatively short distance from Maindy. Okay, so we've seen many of these types of applications now. We're very familiar with the issues. On this one, what I've done is taken an extract from a recent appeal decision not very far from this application site, where we refused change of use of a comparable property to a HMO, and we did attempt to robustly defend our parking objections on that one. I'll leave that on the screen a moment so you can read it, but the bold type elements are that the council pointed out that a full assessment of the parking availability had been carried out and indicated that parking availability is at a premium. Ward councillors and residents also indicate that the proposal would lead to parking problems and highway safety concerns due to the gradient of the road, the parking pressure for on-street spaces from the school and the church nearby, all equally relevant to this application. The council contended that parked vehicles mount the pavement to the detriment of pedestrian safety, and this proposal would make the situation worse. And then if we just go down a little, so this is what the inspector said, this is what the inspector said on this application. The inspector said, I am satisfied that the appellant's evidence corroborates with the extensive photographic record and my site assessment that the parking demand from this development would be catered for adequately by on-street parking without detriment to pedestrian and highway safety. And in addition, something that we've heard frequently in appeal decisions on HMOs of late, the inspector was convinced that the parking requirement for the development would not be as high as that advocated by the council, that's the SPG requirement, given that there would be lower car ownership levels for this type of development and that the site is accessible to public transport and services by walking and provides facilities for cycle storage. Now, officers consider that this appeal decision, which isn't that old, relates to a comparable property in a comparable situation. It makes clear to us that inspectors are taking that different view, as committee knows already, and as we've said in our assessment, based on the highway comments, also the sustainable location of the site, the nature of the use itself and likely car ownership based on appeal decisions, there is no robust reason to refuse this application, although the concerns raised by third parties are noted, and therefore officers recommend it be granted subject to conditions, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Joanne. We now come to public speakers, and the first public speaker is Mr. Lloyd Jones, the agent. Mr. Jones.
Could we ask Mr. Jones to speak a bit more slowly, please? He galloped through it at a bit of a speed last time and I couldn't quite take it all in. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I've been instructed by the applicant, Mr. Barnes, to speak in support of this application. The applicant fully supports the positive recommendation made by officers today and the comprehensive report that has been prepared, which addresses all the key issues. The application property is a substantial mid-terrace property that is currently in need of renovation. The property occupies a sustainable location within 400 metres of both the Beechwood and Maindee district centre that has an array of shops and services. The property also enjoys easy access to a frequent bus service on Chepstow Road. The accommodation will be of a high quality and will be managed by Kutch Properties, who specialise in managing a portfolio of HMOs. HMOs provide a valuable type of accommodation for a range of groups that include professionals. My client is aware that there's a strong demand for such accommodation. The typical demographic of Kutch Properties' current tenants are 22 to 55-year-olds who work in a number of professions, including nurses, carers, Admiral staff, ONS staff and council staff. It is noteworthy that the HMO licensing officer and highways has no objection to the proposal. As described in the committee report, the supplementary planning guides on HMOs seeks to avoid clusters of HMOs as they can alter the balance of a community. The proposal will be the first within a 50-metre radius and therefore compliant with the threshold prescribed in the SPG and would not result in an over-concentration of HMOs in the area. There would be no material impact on the amenity of any neighbouring properties through any increase in noise and disturbance. In respect of transport-related matters, a comprehensive parking survey of streets within 200 metres of the property has been undertaken. The parking survey was undertaken in accordance with the Lambeth methodology. The survey found that there is sufficient capacity within the area to accommodate the level of parking generated by this change of use. The highway officer has no objection to the proposal, as it will not impact on highway safety, as the parking demands can be accommodated on streets. In summary, McLaren has significant experience in converting such properties and ensuring that they are of a high quality and well managed. The property occupies a sustainable location and will not lead to an over-concentration of HMOs within the area, which will ensure that there's no impact on amenity. In addition, there will be no impact on highway safety, as there is sufficient on-street parking available on surrounding streets. Finally, there's been no objection from any consultee. As you have just heard, there are a number of recent appeal decisions which support the recommendation made by officers today. The proposal complies with local and national planning policies and is respectfully requested that you approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you very much. The second speaker is the ward member, Councillor Deb Davis. Councillor Deb Davis.
Just going to see if I can call her back in now, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davis. You're on screen. I can see you, Councillor Davis. I don't know whether you're on mute, I think.
Yeah.
So it might be an issue with the speakers because she's Councillor Davis is not on mute.
No, she's on screen. I can see her. But,
I wonder if Councillor Davis might want to put her headphones on. That might work.
headphones, Councillor Davis.
Chair, while we've got a brief pause, can I apologise for joining late? I've also had IT problems.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor White. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Councillor White, could you confirm if you saw the presentation, please?
No, I joined part of the way through, so I won't be voting on it.
Thank you. Can that be noted, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I think we're going to need to put a time limit on.
Yeah.
Dave's been able to join, unfortunately.
Yeah. What do you suggest? Minutes or?
Joanne Evans, do you have any suggestions?
Guidance.
Well, if she can't join the meeting and we can't hear her, then we should carry on, really.
Yeah. Could I suggest someone contact Councillor Davis by email if she's got a written submission? If she could get that.
We wouldn't have a telephone link, Chair, would we?
No, it needs to be on screen. I think Councillor Farris needs to be.
Councillor, I will contact Councillor Davis.
Yeah. If she's got a written submission prepared as well as, and she gets that across. I've read councillors' statements before to committee.
Chair, if Councillor Davis can join by telephone, the rules are that she must be heard and be able to hear the meeting. The picture is not as important. So.
Okay. Well, I'll say no, and I'll only wait another minute, and
Hello, Chair, it's Anne. Just to let you know, I've been on the phone with Councillor Davis. She's having terrible problems connecting. She wondered if she could try one last attempt, and maybe towards the end of the discussion, if she was able to join, she could make a statement.
if I could just run that past the legal department and we get an answer.
well, as long as it's before any proposal, it should be okay.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Okay, Anne, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, I'll let her know.
Yeah, we could move on then now to the full committee for their input and their discussion. Committee, who wishes to speak? Charles Ferris.
Effectively, Chair, it seems like we're being asked to judge this on the fact that we didn't have much luck on a previous case, doesn't it? Because we've lost one, we got to sort of temper our decisions. But having nothing better to do yesterday, I went for a drive up Bachelor Road, and it is a terrible gradient, and I think any form of parking there would require more space. It would be a very, very difficult manoeuvre to reverse park in there, I think. So I think you couldn't look at it and say, because the road is this length, therefore you can get that many cars in. I think the gradient is a definite consideration, and a fair percentage of one side of the road is knocked out. Well, I can't say knocked out, it's the wrong term, but is devoted to disabled parking only. So I think Bachelor Road, by the nature of its gradient, and by the nature of the fact it's got a fair number of disabled parking, comes under sort of special consideration that there isn't enough parking there that could normally be expected in a length of road of that run. So with that in mind, I think parking is a material aspect of this, and I would personally not grant the application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferris. Just to put the record straight, Councillor Ferris, you've said we've lost one appeal. I think we've lost more than one appeal, for the record. My screen is telling me now that Councillor Davis can get in. Councillor Davis, can you, please?
I will certainly try. Thank you very much.
Thank
you very much, Councillor Richards. I'm really appreciative of your understanding. So frustrating, ready to speak, and the whole thing crashed. And thank you to the Planning Committee for being so supportive. There's just a number of things I wanted to say. I'm speaking on behalf of my fellow councillor colleagues, and I'm also speaking on behalf of a number of residents who've contacted me, and also put submissions of concern in relation to the street where they live. Traditionally, Bachelor Road was very much a residential area. It's a Victorian terraced type properties, as you've seen on the photographs, and it was very much family living. And more over years have developed, more flats have appeared. HMOs have appeared in the area, and we are seeing a change in the demographics, which is a huge shame. Easwell Primary School was built on that site originally to support those families that lived in that area. Now the conurbation of where children actually attend Easwell Primary School are actually from a wider catchment area than specifically Bachelor Road, St John's Road and Easwell Park Road. Speaking about the school, there is impact on parking when teachers are working, and yes, you've looked at a parking survey, the officers' parking survey that was undertaken during lockdown, but the streets are busy during the working day because teachers will also park. You've also got a church nearby. You've also got it's not just the Easwell Primary School, you've also got the additional needs school at the back there as well. But what I specifically wanted to focus on is, very kindly, on page 87 of the report, officers highlighted for us a diagram which showed the 50 meters radius in relation to Bachelor Road and that specific property. What you'll notice is that 50 meter radius, actually the majority of actually goes straight over Easwell Primary School. Now, if you move that radius to beyond and across St John's Road, you would actually also understand there's a large number of HMOs within that street as well. You've got the LSO areas 1, which is where Bachelor Road, but it immediately backs onto LSO A2 area, and now it says there are less number of HMOs within the area too. However, they are predominantly on that St John's Road site. So you have actually got an amalgam of HMOs within that specific area, which puts pressure on the area. So there is a pressure on parking. There is intense living there. And my concern is the changing aspect of the demographics in the community. We're losing a sense of community within that area. We're losing a sense of family. And that's what concerns me. Single people living in single dwellings changes that perspective. And that is why I'm putting an appeal in relation to this planning application to you as a committee. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Thank you very much. And committee, thanks for your patience, so to speak.
Thank you.
Yes. If I could move now then to the committee. Charles Ferris, you've already spoken. Do you wish to say any more, Charles?
No, thank you, Chair. I think that's about it, really. Cheers.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other committee members?
Yes, Chair, I agree, totally agree with Charles. I mean, this has always been the case now with our HMOs around the areas. You know, our hands are getting tied all the time with all these HMOs. And like I said, it is parking, which is a main issue around that area. It is really bad. I understand that. Also, as well, where they've got the recycle bins. You know, what room there is for the recycle bins at all? You know, could be a lot more rubbish from the property itself.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tracy Hollyoak. Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me okay, Chair?
Yes, indeed.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm really concerned here as well. I mean, we do see communities decimated by our HMOs, and I know under appeal, you know, we've lost some cases. However, you know, we really need to be looking at these HMOs and the radius of them. And I believe our fellow councillor said, and colleagues said, that it backs onto a LS2 area. The parking is really valuable within this area, and there are concerns. We're right next to a school. You know, the dangers of that road anyway are paramount, and we've seen this time and time again. And it just worries me. It worries me, one, that we're turning everything over a two-storey building into an HMO, and even two-storey buildings, especially, you know, at the decimation of our communities. And, you know, there's no future, well, generations that have been brought into account here. There's no quality there. You know, and I just feel that we need to really be looking at the parking issues within our communities, and also the HMOs and the numbers that we are producing, because they're far outweighing, you know, family environment properties, and I think that's having a huge impact on our communities, and also the community members' well-being, you know, and I think that really needs to be taken into account. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hollyoak. Thank you very much. Councillor Trevor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. Point of clarification, really, I'm looking at. The current building is a 7-bedroom building. Why has a limit been put on to 6 persons in the new development? Is there a particular reason for that? A maximum of 6 persons in 6 bedrooms.
Do you want me to answer that, Chair? Yeah, the existing property is a 7-bedroom dwelling, but the proposal is to change the use to a 6-bedroom HMO, hence the reference to 6 bedrooms, 6 occupants as a recommended condition.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is what is the reason for that? Why not go for a 7-bedroom? Is there a reason for not doing that?
That's the choice of the applicant, Chair. It's not something that we have requested or devised.
Okay, that's lovely. Thanks, Joanne. It's as long as it's the applicant that's done that and not us.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Any other councillor? No? I could do with one of those biscuits, Tracy. Any other?
No, oh well, it was better last time.
Any other councillor, please? Okay. Well, if we could refer to the proposal and the committee's decision, the recommendation is that this application be granted with conditions. Committee, please. Councillor Guy.
Well, somebody's got to make a proposal. I make a proposal that we accept the recommendations, so we have a vote on it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guy. Is there a seconder to that proposal, please?
Yeah, I'll second, Chair.
Thank you very much. So it's been proposed and seconded on this application, which is 20-1110, that we accept the officer's recommendation, which is granted with conditions. So Neil, could you organise a vote, please?
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Charles Ferris, please.
Against the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Jordan.
Against the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor John Guy.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Tracy Hollyoak.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor James Clark.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Trevor Watkins.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Carmel Townsend.
Against.
Thank you. And yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. So that's 5, 4 and 3 against, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Thank you, committee.
I'm just going to call Councillor Berry back into the meeting, Chair.
By all means, yes.
Chair, can we check that Councillor White is still with us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
There you are, a picture just to prove it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor White. If we then move to item number 4 on your agenda, pages 92 to 130. It's application number 20-0696. The site is the Old Oak Stave, Ruskin Avenue, Rogerstone, Newport. The ward members are Councillors Yvonne Forsey, Chris Evans and Val Dudley. The presenting officers, Gail Parkhouse. There are 2 public speakers. This is Agnes Alston and Mr. Chris Rabiotti, and the ward member, Councillor Yvonne Forsey, wishes to speak as well. So if I could move to the presenting officer, Gail Parkhouse, and just confirmation, there was late representation.
Chair, I've got a bit of a problem. I was at one time a business partner with Chris Rabiotti's family, so perhaps I should withdraw.
Joanne Evans, please.
If you have a close personal association, then yes, you would have to declare a prejudicial interest and withdraw from the meeting.
Yeah, I thought it was going back some years, but yeah, I think I should.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Ferris. As I said earlier, there was some late representation on this. I hope all committee members have received that. And if we move over to Gail, please, for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so you would have seen the late representation this morning, which referred to an additional education contribution towards primary education. The applicant this morning has confirmed that they agreed to that contribution and also an additional administration fee. So just wanted to make that clear, and I will share my screen now. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay, so this application then is for the demolition of the existing pub and the construction of 21 flats within 3 blocks and associated infrastructure works. This is an outline of the site. This is the pub building here, its grounds and the car park. Let's give you an aerial image of it as well. This is the pub building, the pub gardens, as it were, and then the car park here. And then to give you a wider context, okay, yeah, so it's located in the Mount Pleasant housing estate, just off Ruskin Avenue, which runs along here. Mount Pleasant is a predominantly residential housing estate, comprised primarily of detached and semi-detached houses, although there's a complex of flats in this location here, which are called Stevenson Court. There's a primary school, Mount Pleasant Primary School, to the north, and then the Monmouthshire and Brecon Canal, which is to the south. The housing estate is accessed by Ruskin Avenue, which connects onto Kevin Road here to the south, and then also to the north by Groves Road, which is just slightly off this slide. I should also say, so the application site is this pub and the car park. There's also a planning permission granted for 3 houses on this section of the car park, and I'll just show you a slide of those just to give you some context. So yeah, planning permission for 3 detached houses on the remaining part of the car park. This part of the car park is the application site. Just to give you some photos then of the site. This is a view of the car park from Squires Gate Road to the south. It's proposed to use this access and to retain this vegetation and trees. And then just here you can see the other car park, which has got planning permission for those 3 houses. Oops. This is a closer look then of the pub building. That's the front of the pub. It's Ruskin Avenue by here, and this is some of its garden area. Looking towards the rear of the pub building, and this is the car park where those 3 houses have got planning permission, and then in the background the houses in the neighbouring area. This is a view looking towards the rear of the building. As you can see, it's got a bit of a tired appearance, and it's been vacant for some time now. This is a view of one of the neighbours closer to the application site. This is number 80 Squires Gate. This is a footpath here which is proposed to be retained. This is looking towards the rear of the site. This is an access road to the north, a footpath that connects Ruskin Avenue through to residential properties further on. And we can just see a little bit of Stevenson's Court there. Again, the rear of the site, and this is this northern access road, which is proposed to be retained. And then looking towards the end of the northern access roads and those residential properties is 80 Squires Gate. Just to give you some pictures of the neighbouring flatted development, Stevenson's Court. Here and here. And then this is another close neighbour. This is 201 Ruskin Avenue, which you'll see have been referred to a few times in the report. And just to give you an idea of the relationship, the back garden, that northern access road, which is proposed to be retained, Stevenson Court, and then some of the pub. And then a wider view then of the neighbouring garden, rear garden, that northern access, and the pub again. And then again, that view just panning out slightly. And then this is the view you get of the pub now from Ruskin Avenue, so that's its frontage currently to the road. Okay, then moving on to the development itself, it's proposed to construct 3 apartment blocks containing 7 flats, 7 2-bed flats. There'll be 3 on the ground floor, 3 on the first floor, and then 1 in each roof space. And they're named as Block 1, Block 2, and Block 3. Block 1 has a frontage onto Ruskin Avenue, and Blocks 2 face into the site around this central landscaped area. It's proposed to retain this northern access road, as I showed you in those photos. Call this the unnamed road in the report. It's also proposed to continue the footpath where it stops currently, continue it into the site, and also provide some parking spaces within the grass verge, so taking out some of the grass verge to provide some parking spaces.
Yeah, excuse me, Chair, sorry to be a pain. Could you just enlarge that picture a little bit for us, please?
I can try, yeah. How's that?
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah,
lovely.
Okay. So there's 2 bin stores within the site, one at the end of that northern access road here, and then another south and adjacent to the car park. It's proposed to retain the car park at the south of the site and reconfigure its layout. The existing vegetation and trees would be retained, and then some additional trees and landscaping also provided within the car park and then along this boundary with the neighbouring development for 3 houses. Turning to the design of those flats. Okay, so this is the design of the flats. Each flat would have almost an identical appearance, although some of the balconies would be on the side of some of the blocks, but by and large they're identical. They do appear quite large on the plans, but they are 2.5 stories in scale. And I've got a photo, an image rather, of the neighbouring 3 houses which granted permission, just to give you some context and some scale as to how they appear alongside those houses. And then also in plan form. There we go. And this is Block 3, which sort of aligns then with those 3 houses which we granted permission for. Okay, so this is the elevation of Block 1, which would face onto Ruskin Avenue. It's broken up by render in the white and then brickwork here in the darker, and it's proposed to put obscure glazing in all the side windows in order to prevent overlooking to neighbouring gardens. Before I go on to the main issues, just wanted to run through the planning history on the site because it may seem familiar to some. We brought it before Planning Committee in 2019, and permission was granted for 6 houses, just on the site where the pub is currently, so I'm not including the car park. And that's the layout here with that northern access road, also part of the scheme. And then also there was an application refused actually in 2014 for 10 flats within the car park area. That application was refused because it didn't have a noise assessment to demonstrate that the pub wouldn't be harmful to residents at that time. And also because there was insufficient parking left over for the pub, and they didn't agree to planning contributions. But it's important to note that the scale and the layout of that building didn't form a reason for refusal. Okay, so the main issues then with this application, there's the principle of development, the impact on the local highway network. There's concerns over parking and displacement of vehicles which use the car park currently, the impact on residential amenity, the impact on visual amenity and the character of the area, air quality, noise, ecology, landscaping, waste and planning contributions. So I'll just run through those in turn. So the principal development, it's a brownfield site within the settlement boundary. It proposes residential development in a residential area, and evidence is being provided which demonstrates that the use of a pub or a restaurant is unlikely to be viable in the long term, and there are similar or better offers of pubs in the nearby area, and so we consider the principle of the loss of the pub and its residential use to be acceptable. Turning to highways, there's a lot of local concern about additional highways using Ruskin Avenue and its junction with Kevin Road. It's acknowledged that during the morning and evening peak periods there's a lot of congestion in the area, that's not disputed. The development proposes 50 parking spaces, which includes Vista parking spaces, and that's compliant with the parking standards SPG. And then industry standard methodology has been used to calculate the predicted vehicle movements with such a development as this, which have been compared against the lawful fallback position of a pub. And I'll just show you what that data shows us. Okay, so this is the fallback use as a former pub and restaurant. And here's the peak morning and the peak evening, and then the overall daily movements. So you'll see that the fallback use is they don't predict any movements during the peak morning, but then in the evening there's a total of 49 movements, and overall an estimated 677 movements. Compare that then against the proposal for 21 flats. Slight increase in the morning peak period of 6 movements, but far less than in the evening of 7 vehicle movements, and then overall just 77 daily movements. So the data is showing us that actually when compared with the existing or the fallback use, whilst it's marginally worse in the morning, it's much better in the evening, and highway officers don't object to the application on that basis, and furthermore they don't consider that there needs to be any improvements to the local highway network as a result of the development. They also consider that the accesses are acceptable, they're existing accesses, and also as the amount of parking is compliant with the SPG, that's also acceptable. There is concern that parents currently use the car park informally to drop off and pick up children from the nearby school. And then this parking would be displaced onto neighbouring streets. I mean, we recognise that may be an issue. However, it is an informal arrangement, and the landowner could stop this at any point. And it's considered it wouldn't be reasonable to give this weight when making a decision. Turning to residential amenity, again, concerns are raised about the impact on neighbouring properties. As you're aware, the new dwellings SPG sets out a number of tests in order to protect protect privacy, both within the home and in the garden, and also to protect light and to protect overbearing impacts. It also sets standards for amenity of future occupiers. And so we've applied those tests, and the proposal satisfies all of those tests. And then overall, we consider that the impact on existing and future residential amenity is acceptable. And this is subject then to some conditions to secure the obscure glazing and a construction environmental management plan to protect existing residents during the construction period. Looking at visual amenity, concerns are raised about flats and the scale of development, and residents feel like this is inappropriate for the area. I've got a few slides just to make some comparisons with what is existing and what we've approved recently, just to give you some comparisons. Okay, so this is the existing pub at the moment, and then this is what's proposed as you're looking from Ruskin Avenue. This is 201 Ruskin Avenue, and that just helps you understand the relationship between the properties and the scale of development alongside each other. I've already showed you this one. This one is to show you the 3 houses that we've granted planning permission and how that sits alongside those houses. You can see that the scale is comparable. And then just in the corner here, you can see the side elevation of Stevenson's Court, just to the north of the site. And then this is the development which I referred to, the 2019 permission for 6 houses. And this is the frontage onto Ruskin Avenue. This slide is a helpful layout, overlay rather. In the red, you can see the approved houses on top of what is proposed. And again, that helps to show the comparison in terms of the scale. And then finally, I talked about the 2014 permission, which, although refused for other reasons, that the scale and the flatted nature was considered acceptable. So that red overlay just shows that, but in comparison to what is proposed currently. Although I should say that that flatted 2014 consent was on the car park below this, so it wouldn't overlay it directly. And so hopefully from that you can get a picture of the scale and the height of the development, and it gives a good comparison to with what's been approved previously and then with its surroundings. And so overall we consider that it wouldn't appear out of character with the surrounding area or at odds, and we consider it to be visually acceptable. Moving on to air quality then, we note that there is an air quality management area on Kevin Road. However, this site is not within it, and it's not within a buffer zone. An assessment of air quality impact is not required in accordance with the SPG on air quality. And as vehicle trips would be less than its fallback use as a pub, we consider there to be no harmful impacts on air quality, although we do recommend a condition to secure electrical vehicle charging points in order to contribute towards improving air quality generally. In terms of noise, we've had no objection from environmental health concerning noise. It's considered that a residential use is compatible with its surroundings, and again, a construction environmental management plan would be secured by a condition to protect residents during the construction period. Turning to ecology, landscaping and trees, officers covering these matters have no objection, subject to the conditions set out in the report. And overall, it's considered to provide an attractive scheme which will protect existing trees, provide good quality landscaping and additional trees, and it provides ecological mitigation and enhancements. Waste. There are two waste storage areas proposed, and they are considered to be adequate to serve the development, and they can also be serviced by council refuse lorries, which has been demonstrated. And then finally onto the planning contributions. There has been some discussion about this, and there's some dialogue in the report about how these contributions have been agreed, but in summary, the applicant has agreed to provide 6 affordable housing units within the development itself, £44,000 towards leisure contributions, and then very recently this morning around £38,000 towards primary school education for the Mount Pleasant school. And these contributions have satisfied the planning obligation supplementary guidance, and then in summary, we consider that the impacts of the development to be acceptable, subject to the conditions set out in the report. We recommend the application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. We've got three speakers now. The first public speaker is Mrs. Agnes Elston. Mrs. Elston.
Hi, Chair. I'll just introduce Agnes now, just for a moment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak at the meeting.
Good morning.
I represent myself and a number of Mount Pleasant Estate residents living in Squires Gate and Ruskin Avenue, in close proximity to the proposed development. We don't object to the redevelopment of this site in general. The earlier submission to build 6 houses was viewed as a positive step to regenerating the site appropriately. Our concerns focus on the nature of this development in size, design and density. Building 21 flats, 3 stories high, is at odds with Mount Pleasant Estate, which is largely comprised of single or 2-storey detached and semi-detached houses. Properties in close proximity to the development will undoubtedly suffer from invasion of privacy. I've lived at 201 Ruskin Avenue for 30 years. Our house features on several of the developer's drawings. We're amongst the most seriously impacted. The plans refer to 2 stories plus a modest additional 3rd-storey flat. The fact is, each of these blocks are 3 stories. They measure 9.2 metres in height, 25 metres long and 11.5 metres wide. My home and most neighbouring properties measure 7 metres in height. That's a significant difference with serious consequences regarding privacy. Please may I draw your attention to several points in the report. 7.79, protecting privacy within existing gardens. It's stated that the SPG doesn't actually recommend a specific separation distance for flats, yet the 10-metre rule that is recommended for single dwellings has been applied to these 3-storey blocks. This doesn't take into consideration the additional intrusion of privacy afforded by the sheer height of these flats. Being overlooked by 3-storey flats with numerous windows is a completely different prospect than being overlooked by a 2-storey single dwelling. Regardless of whether the development is 10 metres from our boundary, the sheer size and elevation of these buildings will be both imposing and overbearing. Point 7714. The side elevation of block 3 of these flats is only 3 metres from the rear boundary of 90 Squires Gate. The owner's concerns have been dismissed because the garden of 90 Squires Gate is assessed to be 25 metres long. Therefore, the proximity is somehow considered acceptable. Mitigating this way simply because the owner has a large garden seems grossly unfair. Block 1 and 2 of the flats will be much closer in proximity to our home than the current building, and given the height and overall density will contribute to a reduction in material light in our rear garden and will completely invade the privacy of our main living and sleeping accommodation at the rear of our home. It's been suggested that incorporating render either side of the brickwork as part of the design will alleviate the visual impact. I can assure you no amount of pleasing aesthetic will alleviate the impact of living so close to such imposing structures. We vehemently disagree with the statements made in section 7.8 that the overall design is acceptable in terms of scale and massing, and describing it as similar to or comparable with earlier proposals is both disingenuous and neither accurate or fair. These large blocks of flats are not similar in any way to 6 or 3 single dwellings, which would have blended well with the existing area and posed no issues with privacy. An earlier proposal for 10 flats was refused. We also have concerns regarding traffic generation and road safety. The report suggests that by comparing the extrapolated data with the fallback position of the former pub, there will only be a maximum of 6 or 7 extra vehicle movements. This seems a huge underestimate for a possible additional 50+ vehicles, and it also ignores the fact that the pub did not generate traffic at peak commuting times. This comparison, we feel, is meaningless and the conclusion highly unlikely. We would like to state we're all reasonable and pragmatic people who recognise the need for provision of housing. We would unanimously welcome the development of this site with a proposal that is appropriate, safe and in keeping with Mount Pleasant Estate. This proposal is entirely the opposite. It represents overdevelopment that will invade the privacy of homes in close proximity. It will add to the existing burden of traffic and will be visually overbearing and completely at odds with the existing vernacular. We would please appeal to your sense of community and implore that you consider the residents' point of view. Please consider there were a total of 71 individual objections and a petition of 39 signatories submitting to the Planning Department. The recommendation to accept this proposal, we feel, shows little regard for the concerns of the residents of Rogerstone. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Alston. The next public speaker supporting the application is Mr. Chris Rabiotti.
Just one moment, Chair.
Yep.
Let me just set the time.
Sure.
Okay,
yeah, hi. Good morning and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about the application for the proposed housing development at the Old Oak Stave, Rogerstone. I will try and keep it brief because, as you can see from Mrs. Parkhouse's report, it is very thorough and covers every aspect of this application. Prior to purchasing the site at the beginning of 2020, I sought professional advice and appointed a highly regarded local professional team who have liaised with Mrs. Parkhouse for the last 9 months. Several local estate agents confirm that there is a definite shortage of homes for first-time buyers, people looking to downsize, and those people whose circumstances have changed but want to remain in the local community. The planning policy does not state apartments are unacceptable. In fact, there was an application to build 10 apartments on the car park in 2014, which was only refused due to noise from the pub and the loss of the car parking spaces. As you all acknowledge, this site was once a very busy pub, producing a high volume of traffic and noise from deliveries and late night comings and goings. If you go back further, when Asda was located here, the volume of traffic was even greater. Councillor Evans' main objection is that the scheme is not providing affordable homes. However, in accordance with planning policy, we will be providing 6 affordable homes and working closely with Newport City Homes to deliver this. Furthermore, these apartments by their very nature are more affordable than the approved housing scheme. The current approved scheme for 6 houses is highly unlikely to be built due to the impact of the affordable housing contribution, which makes the scheme unviable. Throughout the planning process, we have respected the planning officer's comments and have amended the scheme accordingly. The drawings being revised at least six times to produce a high quality, affordable scheme, which acknowledges the professional feedback. This has resulted in the original scheme being reduced from 24 to 21 apartments, which has had an impact on the viability of the scheme. With reference to the objections from 201 Ruskin Avenue, my professional team have provided two drawings to the planning officer which confirm that these objections are unfounded. There is not a single objection from the council's professionals or consultants, and the landscape officer has actually praised the landscape scheme. The planning policy has been complied with throughout the planning process. I do understand the resistance to change, but strongly believe this scheme will enhance the local community, the streetscape, and provide much needed homes. It is important to clarify that the car park is not a private is a private car park, because some of the objectors appear to believe that this is for public use, which is not the case. If the scheme is approved, I intend to use local builder contractor who employs local people to build this project, thus creating much needed jobs during these difficult economic times. Furthermore, as we all know, there is a housing shortage and the government policy is to fill that gap. I accept that the site as it stands is an eyesore, and if planning consent is granted today, we intend to start work immediately, with the clearance of the site being a priority. There is support for the scheme locally, as people are fed up with a derelict site, and such a smart looking development can only enhance the value of the local properties and provide much needed affordable housing to people of all ages. Flats will be more affordable than houses and will expand the choice in the local housing market, allowing local people to remain in their community even if their circumstances change. I sincerely hope the committee can look at the scheme positively with its planning merits, as the senior planning officer has done, and vote in favour. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Rabbiotti. Thank you very much. The next speaker is the ward councillor, Councillor Yvonne Forsey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Colleagues, I ask you to reject this planning application. There are many reasons why this development is unacceptable, and I will go through them now. As has already been mentioned, this is a proposal for 3 blocks of flats which are 9.2 metres high. These are 3-storey flats. As you possibly know, the area of Rogerstone consists mainly of 2-storey buildings. If you think about Avon Village, it's all 2-storey buildings. If you think about Mount Pleasant, High Cross, Keffin Wood, it's all 2-storey buildings. This proposal is housing which is much higher and much denser than anything else in this area. Just because you plan to clad the outside of the 3rd floor with slates or tiles, it doesn't make it an attic. A 3rd floor is proposed. This development is not at all in keeping with the housing in this area. I'm going to take you through some of the points in the report, if I may. But just before I do that, Stevenson Court was referred to as flats. Well, I don't know anybody else that describes that as flats. It's 2-storey building, and all of the residents there have their own front door on the ground level. To refer to the report, please. 5.1.2 says, quote, "This area is well served by public amenities and transport services." Well, there's one bus every 2 hours. That is not well served by transport services. 5.10, our own head of city services says there is an objection on the basis that provision for cycling has not been fully considered. 5.10.1, quote, "The provision for cycle storage does not appear to conform to the minimum standards set out in the Sustainable Travel SPG. 5.10.3, dedicated or shared use paths should be included within the development so as to provide safe links away from vehicle routes. It's very difficult to retrofit safe cycling and walking routes, and that is why it's so important that these routes are considered when the developments are being designed. Something has been rammed into every inch of this site, and this will lead to insufficient amenity space for potential residents and an overbearing building for the established residents. I don't know if we can go back to some of the slides in the moment, but even the grass verge beside the path, as you could see on slide 24, is being removed. And that is acknowledged in 7.3.2. On 7.4.3, it says because the existing pub failed, it implied the pub was surplus to the needs of the community. It wasn't surplus, it was just badly run for many years and in urgent need of refurbishment. This section fails to mention the successful restaurant Mammalina's that operated from this site. A well-run pub restaurant would be welcomed by the community, many of who would be able to walk to the pub from the surrounding area. 7.5.3, in my opinion, shows unrealistic vehicle movements. If the pub had generated 49 cars between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. daily, then it would still be open. The sort of traffic generated by the pub is completely different to the sort of traffic generated by 21 flats. The flats would generate people going to work in the morning and coming home in the evening. A pub generates traffic of people going to it at lunchtimes and evenings. 7.5.5 says it would generate an additional 6 vehicle trips in the morning and 7 in the evening. First of all, this is totally unrealistic. 21 flats generating 6 vehicle movements. This is the total estimate, not additional, total. But even so, this number will have a significant harmful effect. 7.7.3, communal amenity space. There's some sort of mathematical sleight of hand going on here. There are 21 flats produced, but in the calculations, this has been reduced to 15 because 6 of them have balconies. The desired space is 13 square metres per person. This proposal would give a total of 780 square metres of communal amenity space. So with 21 flats, that would give an average of 9.3 square metres per person. This is well below the required 13. There's a substantial loss of privacy for 201 Ruskin Avenue. This is acknowledged in 7.7.6. 7.7.7, I think the wrong word has been used here. Except 80 Squires Gate, there are no infringements. This should be except 80 Squires Gate, i.e. we're acknowledging there is an infringement on 80 Squires Gate. 7.7.10, it is acknowledged that 201 Ruskin Avenue would be overlooked. This is not acceptable. 7.7.11, it is so close that the living room and kitchen of the dwellings that we're proposing to build would have to have obscured glass. If this was a bathroom, this would be okay, but this is a living room and a kitchen, and we're proposing to build flats with obscured glass on living rooms and kitchens. 7.7.3 states this would have an impact on 90 Squires Gate. 7.7.83 says the overall height is not significantly different than the approved scheme for 6 houses. Yes, it is. The height has been increased from 7 metres to 9.2. The height is significantly different. This proposal is for a development with significantly higher and denser, and it should not be allowed. 7.8.5, this development was refused in 2019. Why are we comparing it to something that was refused? The application 14/0336 was deemed unacceptable. We can't pick out some aspects of this and say that was okay. The development as a whole was deemed unacceptable. 7.8.7 says good design would see parking provision integrated. This is not good design, either for the potential new residents or the established residents. 7.9, air quality. This development will see an increase in pollution in this area. This development is not in an air quality management area, but all of the traffic will have to go through an air quality management area. Planning permission has already been granted for some housing on this site without complaint for residents. Residents are happy to see this site redeveloped, but in a manner which is in keeping with the local area. One last point, and then I'm going to sum up. It is proposed to park the refuse vehicle on the junction of Ruskin Avenue. I don't know if you know Ruskin Avenue, it's a bit like a lollipop. You come up the hill, you go all the way round and you go back down again. So if you look on slide 28, the proposal is to park the refuse vehicle a couple hundred metres down from the school, thereby blocking off the entire Ruskin Avenue loop. So as the rubbish and recycling are being collected on a Monday morning, just as people are trying to get to work and school, the entire Ruskin Avenue circle would be blocked off. It's hard to see how more chaos and confusion could be created, affecting the whole estate. No one will be able to get in or out. So colleagues, I ask you to reject this planning application. The rules are, the reasons are, the development is not in keeping with the local area. It's 3 stories rather than 2 stories. It does not conform to the minimum sustainable travel SPG. There is inadequate provision for bin and recycling collection. This development will be overbearing and much denser than the surrounding area. Several houses are going to be severely impacted in terms of privacy. The housing does not meet the desirable standard for the communal amenity space. It's not going to be good for either the existing residents or the potential residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Forsey. Does the planning officer wish to come back in at this stage, Gail Parkhouse, or would you prefer to wait till the committee comments?
I think I'm happy to wait for committee comments. There's a lot covered there, which I think has been covered in the report myself already. So yeah, I'm just happy just to wait to see what members have to say.
Okay, thank you. Right then, committee, who wishes to speak?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just going back on actually the beginning of the application, and they were saying there were 64 representations were made. Is that with a 50-metre radius? And if so, is that 64 representatives around that area itself? You know, because there's quite a lot of people who have actually made serious representations about the application. It just seems like it's gone further than the 50-metre radius. Also, as well, on the table 1 on 7.53, it was saying about the former pub and restaurant. Where did you get the figures from? I noticed that the trip generate database, but the pub has been closed since around 2018. So you know that's just over 2 years, you know, difference from what the actual traffic says around that area. And also as well, you know, with these the new development with the 21 properties and the 6 houses, is there enough spaces for the schools to accommodate any of these children, like Mount Pleasant, Jubilee Park, Iverhale, which is the Welsh School in Beddis, and also the primary school, the Welsh School in Basing as well. And also, where we've got on the late representation where he said with the S106 money, I did find it a bit not very good really, but they said with the relevant the primary education contribution, the provisions to improve education at Mount Pleasant or Ysgol Iverhale, you know, I would really put both schools, the primary schools, because people from Rogerstone actually use the Welsh School in Beddis as well, you know, and that school might need some money as well to go with it. I think it should really go between the 2 schools and not just the one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor James Clark. James?
No, Chair, it was more to the point, so I'll stay on and vote on this, but then I'll have to leave.
Okay, yeah, you did. I did announce that at the start of the meeting. Thank you very much. Any other one on committee need to speak, please? Or wish to speak?
Can I come in, Chair?
Councillor Graham Berry.
So, remembering that my raised hand doesn't work. Yes, I used to live there. That's the second time I've said that in about 2 weeks on these kind of groups. I lived in Ruskin Avenue. I can assure you that then it was horrendous to try and get out onto the main road, even though there's been traffic improvements since then. I know the neighbours well because we still socialise with them, and the fear of this development coming onto them is really, really hurting. I can't really tell you because I'm not experienced in myself, other than when I've tried to go up there and visit them, you have to choose the right time of day to go and do it. And I can't see that this would add to the convenience of that, more add to the inconvenience. So on behalf of the local residents of Ruskin Avenue that I know very well, I must assure you that I'm going to go against this. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next councillor, please.
That's me, I think, Chair.
Councillor John Guy, yes.
Yeah, in respect of the access and the road situation, where you've got the junction at the bottom, it's already been mentioned about that. The highways have made certain observations, but I would have thought really over a period of time now, the density of traffic, whether in fact they ought to be introducing traffic lights in order for people to get out of there. It's something to be considered, I suppose, for the future, but it has been said already, it's very, very difficult to get out there at certain times. So I don't know whether the highways consider that. There is some information about it that I think they say that there's no need for anything to be done, but that's the point I'm making, is on the access down on Risca Road.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guy. And then Councillor Richard White, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mine was just a short question for information. The unknown road which serves block 2 and 3, is that an adopted highway or is it a private one? I notice it's inside the boundary of the site. If it's a private road, who will maintain it? Or will it be made up to adopted standard and adopted? And has it got the correct signage where it approaches the main road junction? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Trevor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. Number of things really. One, I'm concerned about the height going to 9.2 meters high. The other thing is the overlooking of 201 and the obscure glazing. I think this is silly. You might as well brick it up if that's the case. And obviously, if that's the case, then this development would not be approved. So the other thing is, Chair, I am concerned of where the council have got the figures from in regards to movement of vehicles. If you're talking about 50 flats, that's a vehicle going in and going out. There's 100 movements for a start. So that's besides anything else in the meantime. I am in favour of turning down this application, Chair, on those conditions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watkins. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Jordan, did you wish to come back in, or did you just make a comment about Councillor Guy's comments?
Yeah, it was just a comment, but it was just a message for John Guy. I totally agree with that, with the traffic light system, you know.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Any other councillor before I call the presenting officer back in? No? Okay, Councillor Gail Parkhouse, Principal Planning Officer.
Chair, can I just say, if Councillor Berry does have close personal relationships with people who might be affected by this application, then he should be considering whether he needs to make a declaration of interest.
Okay, can I come back, Chair?
Yes, by all means.
That is a very valid point. I do have friendships up there and I've had them for years. That was the second house I ever bought all those years ago. And I'm quite happy not to vote on this.
Okay. Okay, I think you are on the side of caution there. Thank you very much. Thanks for the advice.
Yeah, Chair, then you need to leave the meeting at this point.
Okay, you understand that, Councillor Berry. Thank you very much. Right. Presenting officer, Gail Parkhouse, please.
Okay, yeah, I've just tried to make a note of some of those points. Okay, so public consultation, yeah, 50-metre boundary and picking up neighbours was undertaken. But this is a major scheme. So prior to the application coming to the council, the applicants were required to undertake their own public consultation, and that may have stretched further than our own 50-metre boundary. And also it was advertised through site notice. So again, that might have captured more people within that 50-metre radius. There was comments about the TRIX data, how that was derived, how that was brought up. I mean, I should probably really defer to the highways officer, maybe just to clarify their position on that. So maybe we can do that afterwards. Similarly, on the point raised about schools, I will defer to the Planning Contributions Manager just to comment on that as well. In terms of privacy and the impact on neighbours, I mean, the report is fairly detailed. It goes into all of the various impacts which could take place and how it's assessed against the new dwellings SPG. In all cases, it does satisfy the SPG and those tests within it. There's one instance where there are windows within 3 metres of a rear garden to 90 Squires Gate. We've looked at that closely. They do propose obscure glazing to prevent overlooking into that garden. Those rooms which have obscure glazing also have another window and a larger window. These are only small openings, so you know the outlook from those rooms would still be considered acceptable. There was a question about the unnamed road to the north of the site, and just to answer that question, it isn't adopted, that road. In terms of maintenance, I think maybe I would need to refer to the highways officer on that. Yeah, and I think I've covered everything I want to on that. Perhaps we could ask the highways officer to come in next.
Yeah. Could the highways officer comment, please? And then this Planning Contribution Manager, section 106, stand by, please.
Hello, Chair.
Hello.
Regarding the road to the north of the site, that's not adopted by Newport City Council. It's a private road, and I would assume it would be maintained under a maintenance agreement, which would be put in place to cover all the infrastructure within the development. Regarding the TRIX data, the TRIX was provided in a transport statement provided by the applicant and compiled by Asbury, who are well-known local transport consultants. I have no cause to actually dispute their findings, and they've got arrivals of I'm sorry, got arrivals of 5 and 6 and departures of 6 in the morning, which is about right. It's normally around about a third of number of units for 2 bedrooms that you would consider. However, I would also add that Newport City Council does not have access to a tricks facility. So I can't actually confirm this, but from my experience, that is about right. It does seem low, but that is only for a 1 hour period. So during the rush hour, people leaving for work between 7 in the morning and after 9 o'clock haven't been considered.
Okay, thanks very much. That's helpful. The planning contributions manager, section 106, there's been reference to late representation and that. Perhaps you could update us, please. Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think the query was raised with regards to the primary provision. I spoke with Councillor Forsey at the end of last week, who raised the issue. She's on the Board of Governors regarding the deficit capacity at the school. So we went back to education. Education came back basically saying that the school doesn't have any spare capacity. The forecast figure for going to 2024, which is as far as they go, as they can project, is the capacity for the school will be 222, whereas the current capacity is only 210. So there's a deficit there of 12. Hence our reasoning at the last minute is asking for this 38,000 towards Mount Pleasant and Evil Isle. Those are the 2 schools that are within the catchment, so we can't go outside the catchment. So those are the two schools that applicable in this matter. With regards to Baselig High School, no 106 was asked because basically as part of the 21st Century Band B programme, the school's going to increase its capacity to 2,050. And the projection figure for 2024 is only 1,968. So there will be a lot of capacity at that school. Hence our reason for not asking for any secondary contribution.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful. Could you confirm, sorry Alan, going back to you, could you confirm that the section 10 sort of final position package, because there's been some variations, there's been some ongoing negotiations.
Yeah.
Important committees should know the full picture, perhaps.
Okay. So it's £38,068 for primary.
Okay.
Mount Pleasant and Eva Isle. 44,367 for leisure.
Thank you.
And £1,649 administration fee.
Okay.
Plus the 6 affordable units.
And 6 affordable units.
Yeah.
Go straight.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, Chair, can I come back then? On that, on that lead representative, that 1.15 then, it did say the approval of education facilities at Mount Pleasant Primary or Ifor Hale. So will that change now to both schools? Because to my reading now, it's either going to go to one or the other.
No, the intention is that it could be used for either. So yeah, that's the intention, is that both those schools fall within the catchment. So either of those schools could be funded.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Jason. Thank you. Right. Any other comments from any other councillor? Thank you, Alan, for that contribution. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if we move forward, then the officer recommendation on this is that it's recommended the application is granted with conditions in section 106 legal agreement, and you've been given the up-to-date legal agreement regarding section 106. Is someone prepared to propose something, please? Is there anybody out there?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'm sat on the fence at the moment. I just don't know which way to turn, so I'm not going to make no recommendations at the moment.
Fine. Don't let me push anybody off.
You're not the only one.
Or prompt anyone.
Hi, Chair. Yeah, I propose to vote with the officer's recommendations.
Okay, so it's been proposed that the committee accepts the officer's recommendation. Is there a seconder to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, and that's been seconded by Councillor John Guy. Fine. Right. So if we could move to the vote, Neil.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jason Jordan, please.
Yeah, sorry, Neil. Can I abstain from voting or no, or is either a yes or a no?
Councillor Jordan, you should vote. We're requesting a decision. If you've got anything you want to query further, through the chair, we can answer those questions if you don't feel you're in a position to vote.
Well, if that's the case, I'll refuse the officer's recommendation then, please.
Thank you. Councillor John Guy.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Tracy Holyoke.
Accept the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, accept 4 recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Trevor Watkins.
Against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Carmel Townsend.
Oh, I might have abstained as well. No, against.
Thank you. Councillor White.
4.
Thank you. And yourself, please, Chair.
4.
That's 5 for the decision and 3 against, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, committee. If you could call Charles Ferris back into the meeting, please, and Councillor Berry.
No problem, Chair. I'll do so now.
Chair, is it possible to have a comfort break a second, please?
5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Really, thanks.
Chair, I'll be leaving the meeting now. Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Chair. Thank you.
Can I also just remind the committee that I can't pause the meeting, so if you can just mute your mics, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
As a point of order, Chair, hang on, I am here. Here we are. By rights, really, when we leave a meeting, we should, under normal circumstances, leave the chamber. Under remote meetings, are we still allowed to leave the screen on and listen to the debate? What is the new rules under the new reality, or whatever we want to call it, for leaving?
You need to leave the meeting. I think we're supposed to check whether you've gone or not, and then we call you back.
Oh, I see. Well, having had a terrible time getting onto the meeting, I didn't close my screen down because I was fearful I couldn't get back on. But by rights, I should have done that. Yeah.
Yes. No. Next time it would be advisable to do that. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Fair enough. Well, I must admit, I was keen to see young Chris Rabiotti, and I can remember him when he had a full head of curly dark hair, which I'm told you had as well, Chair.
Even darker.
You can follow the meeting on the web if you wanted to.
I see. Beyond my technical capabilities, I'm afraid. Okay. Thank you.
Chair, I'm back in now.
Yes, fine. And we're having a comfort break.
Oh, excellent. The technology is, to me, quite easy to use, even though on this occasion I cannot use the raise hand. It won't come up for me.
No,
so
it's not,
I have to adapt.
it's not work for anyone, to be honest, Graham.
Dear, oh dear, oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, we have to,
So,
yeah, we're going to play a new staff in 10 years.
but we're moving on. We'll get there.
Yeah, Neil did see the raised hand facility wasn't able to use on this, wasn't he?
No.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're still having problems with the handset facilities. Sorry.
I thought it was me going mad.
No, Neil can only get to halfway. He can't raise his hand fully yet, so.
And I've let you in every time, Graham, because I see you raise 2 hands.
I have to do it.
Yeah.
Over now a second. I'm not a. Oh. Any more of that now?
Can I told me that's not the chicken in the middle of the night?
Oh, you've been to.
What's that? What'd you say?
I'm asking her, I said, can you phone me, not kick me in the middle of the night, please?
Tell him to. I'll go home now, do we then?
Chair, could I ask a question?
Yes.
What was the result of the first 2 applications, which I missed?
Just a minute.
The Esmer Power Station one was deferred.
All right.
Yeah. Deferred.
I think 5-3 the last but one.
Bachelor Road. Sorry, the first 2.
Yeah.
Landward. I think that was approved.
Yeah, the land one was approved. I think it was 5-3.
This was approved, was it? I'm reliably informed that it was refused. Item 2.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
In accordance with officer's recommendation.
Yeah.
Crispy chicken burger, mozzarella dippers, chocolate raspberry flake McFlurry, and a Big Mac with bacon and a Grand Big Mac for 6 weeks at McDonald's.
Sounds a hefty order.
Do apologise, and that was my son, and look, think about him having McDonald's.
It sounds like a hefty order.
He can eat well.
Okay, is everybody ready to go now? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
Neil, if you could beam us back in. Thank you. The next item on your agenda is item 5. It's covered on pages 118 to 125 in your papers. It's application number 20-1082 and the site is 22 Oak Street. The ward is St Julian's. Ward members are councillors Phil Hoorahine, Carmel Townsend and Holly Townsend. And the presenting officer is Joanne Davidson. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen again. Okay, so 21082, 22 Oak Street. It's for change of use of part of a dwelling to a vehicle or taxi dispatch call office. Hopefully all members of the committee received the late representation on this one yesterday, in which we confirmed a number of late received objections to add to the objections that are already detailed in the officer assessment. Having considered those objections and the ones that are listed in the officer assessment, I just want to focus on the description of the development being applied for. As I've said, it's change of use of part of dwelling to a vehicle or taxi dispatch call office. This is not a proposed change of use to a taxi rank, which the majority of objectors have referred to. This is an office in a house that will remotely dispatch taxis to predominantly school-related pickup drop-offs. So this is not perhaps what we traditionally think of as a taxi rank, where you will get taxis for Dragon or whoever lined up on the side of a lay-by, waiting for people to either ask them for a pickup or for the office to give them a pickup. This is now, with the benefit of technology, whether it be computers, mobile phones, etc., is done remotely. And I think that's an important distinction to make at this stage. So 22 Oak Street. Oak Street is a residential street not far from Clean Road. The application site is outlined in red on this ordnance survey plan, and just highlighting that with my cursor. The internal layout of the property, very simple, quite basic, but effectively the existing floor plan is the proposed floor plan. Because there's no change internally. It will still function as a house, but the resident will happen to have an office set up there, desk, computer, etc., where they'll be able to undertake the taxi dispatch and bookings call office. So from an aerial view, again, to just try and put this into perspective in terms of where it is, Clean Road is over here on the right hand side. Oak Street is this sort of dead end street here, and the property is located on that part of Oak Street and looks like this. You'll see from the history, it has got a planning history. And planning consent was agreed to convert it to a dwelling, having previously been a workshop. Okay, what I've done on this slide is really reproduce things that are already in your officer report, but again, focusing in on what the head of city services has said in relation to highways impact, because this is a key point of objection listed from the representations that have been made on this. So it is a residential street with speed restrictions. The application proposes to provide a taxi office, it's a call office, remember, within the existing property, and the application form and the operator's license forms, which is a separate regulatory process required, state that the proposed taxi office will provide taxi services for school runs and will not require vehicles to attend the site. And obviously the head of city services has said that's acceptable as no additional traffic will be generated by the proposal. However, this should be conditioned as the road network in the immediate area is narrow and likely to become congested with only a small increase in traffic at peak times. And that is the basis on which no objection is raised. So in response to that, officers have recommended a number of conditions, the first one of which I've reproduced on this slide, and that is essentially limiting the use to what's been applied for. We do appreciate, obviously, as officers, that uses can evolve and change over time. And many of those changes can be controlled by us anyway because they include changes of use, but for clarity's sake, that condition is reasonable. It's what's been applied for, and it's clear that it is a taxi dispatch booking call office and a residence, not just a taxi office. And the taxi dispatch call office shall at no time incorporate any customer or driver waiting or welfare areas, not that any are proposed, and all bookings and payments associated with the use shall be performed remotely at all times. And to further enhance that control, we've put a recommended condition on hours of the office element, and then 04, the applicant shall keep a detailed log. So in the event that we receive complaints in future about it, we should be able to inspect a log of the office's activities as part of any enforcement investigations. And what I've clarified in that final paragraph on the slide is that we cannot control the parking of any vehicle on the public highway. So that is why you won't see a condition saying that people can't park a taxi on the highway, because that isn't something that planning can control. Our controls are all planning based and enforceable. Okay, some photographs of the local area. So again, this is looking along Oak Street. Bear with me. I'll take you through these Oak Street. So on this one, the application site can be seen on the left-hand side. Again, these photographs are intended to show parking conditions predominantly during the day. But as you'll remember from those highway comments, there is no parking generation arising from this application. So we're not looking at any shortfall, we're just not looking at any changes. So this is the situation. These photos are all quite recent. So we know that lots of the properties rely on on-street parking. We know that some of these roads are particularly congested at the best of times with parking. But as I say, the key point on this one is there is no increase in traffic generation predicted for the use. And that is the reason why we're recommending those conditional controls. So over and above that, Chair, I think there's a little more for me to say now as part of the presentation, but obviously happy to take questions. And officers recommend this be granted with conditions. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Joanne. Councillor Townsend, it's your ward, so protocol allows you to go first. Councillor Townsend.
Chair, there's a note come up that she's got trouble reconnecting, and she says she needs legal advice on this application.
Ah. Oh, Carmel, there you are. Yeah. Okay, you're on mute, you are, I think, at the moment.
Yeah. Sorry, John, the whole thing just died, so I thought I might have missed loads of stuff. But yes, I needed to ask Joanne Davidson whether I'm able to speak and vote on this application, given that Councillor Berry exempted himself earlier on.
Right. So what?
Because, sorry, Joanne. the other councillor, Townsend, would have spoken on behalf of the residents, but she's had to go back to work. So I just wondered whether I'm in a position to, I mean, basically you've had all the objections from residents, and I was only basically going to put forward their objections and just to cover a little bit of the area and the congestion and the traffic problems that people have, parking and so on. But if I'm not allowed to, then you have my written objections, don't you?
Yeah, if it's a question of whether you've made up your mind before you come to the meeting, or if you're coming to the meeting looking at the presentation and with an open mind, and then you give your comments.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But no, I have come with an open mind, but I know the area very well. And I just wondered whether I should vote on it. That's all. Having put forward,
local knowledge is important to planning committees, so there's no reason why you shouldn't speak.
Okay. Well, I was only going to point out that it's Oak Street goes off Killeen Road at the junction with Heather Road. It's exceptionally busy. Parking is at a premium, as it is for most of the terrace streets in the areas we cover. There are those build out pavements to stop people parking as part of road calming measures. People are concerned that taxis will park outside the house, although you've just said that it's a dispatch centre. I can see that getting out of control. People already use these streets, which are one way or no entry. They just ignore those signs and go racing along those roads, Stafford Road, Stockton Road and Durham Road. We just think that people think that this is just a further intrusion into quite an unacceptable situation for where they live and how they can park or not park their cars. They imagine or can project that there will be antisocial behaviour, noise late at night and possible dangers to children going to and from Glanhusk Primary School. I mean, that's all I've got to say on it, but people have contacted me and I told them that I would speak on their behalf. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Townsend. Thank you very much. Rest of the committee, any comments, please? Charles Ferris, yes.
Chair, I'm surprised really all this gentleman is proposing to do is work from home, which is what we're doing today. I mean, I wonder really why he's needed to make an application, and if he hadn't, would we have ever known?
Okay, Charles, good point, well made. Anyone else, please? Councillor Trevor Watkins and then Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. What protection have residents got in regards to the prevention of taxis going back and forth from the premises?
Can we store that question, Councillor Watkins and Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a bit of a quick one. I think when you have an operator's license, I think you're only allowed to work so many vehicles out of a property anyway, ain't you? Has that been regarded with this application as well?
Okay. Somebody, an officer, come in and answer those two queries from Councillor Watkins and Councillor Jordan. Sorry, Joanne.
That's okay, I'll try. Okay, so the first one then, what's to stop taxis going to and from the property? Okay, well, no one can stop taxis travelling along these roads for whatever purpose that may be. But in relation to this particular change of use, Councillor Ferris is right. The applicant is telling us that it is just a dispatch office. He will sit in his house with his home office or whatever you want to call it and undertake this remote dispatch of taxis via call system, some sort of remote login system, emails, whatever it may be. And that is perfectly reasonable. In relation to why you applied for planning permission, I've asked myself the same question, and my suspicion is, although we haven't confirmed this with them, is that because they engaged in a school-related taxi dispatch pickup arrangement, and therefore has a link with the council and the schools in relation to operating that service. They wanted to get all the paperwork in order. I can only assume that that was a contributing factor to their decision in making the application. In considering the application, though, the number of taxis, I'm not well versed in the taxi licensing arrangements, I'll be honest with you. We haven't put a limitation on it because it's all done remotely. It makes no difference because, as we've already said, there's no need for taxis other than one that's potentially operated by the person who lives at the residence themselves to visit the property in relation to picking up jobs, etc. So I'm not sure if that answers it, Chair, or not, but as I say, the conditions that we're recommended are intended to maintain the control that I understand Councillor Townsend is concerned about. They have been worded explicitly really to enable enforcement should things change, should the entire property be taken over by some sort of taxi booking where you've got waiting areas and things like that. Well, we'll enforce because the conditions don't allow for it, and we also have control over the timing of the taxi call office use.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Anyone else wish to raise a question or a point, please?
Yeah.
Jason?
Yeah, Chair, just a bit of a clarity for some people as well. One member of my family had his own business up in Caerphilly, run a taxi office from his home. He was allowed to have so many vehicles run from the house, not picking up from the house, but he was allowed to only have so many vehicles on his system as such to work. He done most of the airport transfer business and school runs as well. So that was just a bit of a clarification of why I'm trying to get if it was a limit of how many vehicles you were allowed to use. That's all.
Okay, I think has that point been explained by Joanne Davidson?
Yes, Chair. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, any other committee member wish to raise a question or query?
Chair?
Right, yes.
Just a sort of a clarification. On the pictures of the street, I noticed that the parking areas were marked out. Are those residents only parking areas? So if people did call there, they would be contravening that anyway. And also, how will this actually be policed if it does become a problem, like Councillor Townsend highlighted? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, or can I call Joanne back in? Joanne, thank you very much.
Okay, I've got to be honest, I'm not sure. I would suspect, Councillor White, that it is resident permit only, based on that boxed or the white lining on the road, but I can't say that for definite, but maybe Anna will be able to answer that for us.
There's no residence parking restrictions in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, I think some of them are disabled bays, I think.
All right, okay.
Okay, and in relation to the second question raised by Councillor White, how will it be policed? Dare I say that if we were to receive complaints that it had somehow changed, and was not in accordance with the recommended conditions, for example, it would be a case of us going out and observing for ourselves what was going on. And that is partly why we've also required that log to be kept by condition 04 that is on your report. I would also say that there is another regulatory control operating in parallel. That is the taxi licensing regulatory process. And as I've said, this particular application has been brought to us because the applicant is undertaking school-related taxi operations with links to ourselves as a council. So I think, you know, all things considered, I completely understand the concerns about what if it changes, etc. completely. But I think all things considered and the recommended conditions that we've put on the report, that this scheme, this application is acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Back to the committee. Is someone prepared to propose something, please?
Yes, Chair, I prepare to vote the officer's recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Tracy Olio. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ferris. Neil, could you organise the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Charles Ferris, please. Sorry, Councillor Ferris, please.
Pardon me, sorry. I'm for the officer's recommendations.
Thank you.
Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, for the recommendations. For.
Thank you. Councillor Guy, please.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Holyoke.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Berry.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Against.
Thank you. And yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
You.
Don't forget me. I'm for it as well.
Oh.
Thanks very much, Councillor White. Sorry. That's 8 for and 1 against, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Neil.
Thank
you, committee. Thank you very much. We now move to the next item on your agenda, which is item 6, pages 126 to 130. It's application number 20-1171. The site is the Museum and Central Library for John Cross Square. Ward councillors in Stow Hill Ward are Miqdad Al-Nawami and Kate Thomas. The presenting officer is Stephen Williams. So Stephen, and it's presented to committee as it relates to a council-owned building. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, the site relates to the museum library building, which is a 5-storey building in the city centre, located just off Friars Walk. Members will recall that at the last committee meeting, an application to convert the existing information station to a co-working office space was approved. To enable that to happen, it is proposed to relocate the information station into the museum library building, whilst retaining the museum and library use. The application is reported to Planning Committee as the building is owned by the council. That shows the existing entrance into the museum building just off Friars Walk. and I'll just run through the floor plans. So this is the existing ground floor. So the area in white to the left is the Kingsway and all the retail. The entrance is the yellow area here, which is the existing foyer to the museum and library. And then to the rear of that are in red workshops and stores associated with the museum. And the red areas are currently not accessible to the public. To the rear of the foyer is a stairwell and some lifts, and they lead up to level 1. And this is currently where the museum in red is and the library in grey. And then level 2 again is used part museum, part library. This is level 3, again occupied mostly here by the library, but also some offices associated with the museum in red. And finally, the top floor, again, shared between the library and the museum. So in terms of the proposals, this is the proposed ground floor. So the entrance in this sort of brownish colour would be the reception for the information station, but that it would also continue to provide access to the museum and library on the upper floors. The workshop and stores to the rear would not be affected by the application. And then the level 1 would not be affected. That would remain in use as a museum and library. Sorry. There you are. Level 2. So on level 2, parts of the library and museum use would be converted to information station use. So the colour in brown would be the information station, and this would be where the public, members of the public would meet with staff. So this would be publicly accessible. Moving up to level 3, the green is the again, information station use, but this would be the back office, so where the staff would work. And then to the left in blue, the art gallery would remain and would be unaffected. And then finally, the top floor, again, there would be part of the top floor that would be allocated as back office for staff. So in terms of the issues, the site is in a secondary retail location, so retail protection policies apply. However, as the proposal would not involve the loss of any retail, there is no concern on retail policy grounds. In terms of community uses, some of the floor area would be lost in terms of library and museum use, but the building is currently underutilised and the information station is considered to be a form of community facility in any case. The use will actually encourage footfall to the building, and this may encourage interest and increased use of the museum and the library. In terms of highways, it's a zone 1 city core location, so it's highly sustainable. Servicing is currently from Keir Court, and these arrangements will not change, and highways have raised no objection to the application. So in summary, we're recommending the planning permission be granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Committee.
Yes, Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, Chair. Sorry, did Stephen say there'd be no loss of any of the museum part to this building at all, or no?
Yes, certain parts. So on this floor here, this is currently in use as a museum and library use. So clearly this area would be lost in terms of the library and museum use. And on the floor above, as well. But my understanding is that the building is underutilised, so there's potential to sort of make rational changes inside the building that wouldn't cause a problem for the museum or the library.
So no, they're just utilise it around more and just move it around accordingly then, really, then, which in one effect would be quite good actually, because many people then who will use the information station and will actually still then get to use the museum and the library as well.
Yeah. Okay. Any other committee member, please?
Chair, where are we? Oops, hang on. Chair, I'm sorry, I should have remembered. I'm a member of FONMAG, Friends of Newport Museum and Art Gallery. Should I have declared an interest and should I withdraw or what should I do?
Joanne Evans, please.
Yeah. Sorry, you're a member of Friends of the Newport Gallery.
Newport Museum and Art Gallery, yeah, FONMAG.
I mean, obviously it's going to be affected, so yes, I mean, it probably would be in your interest to. I mean, you probably do have an interest, but you need to declare.
Yeah.
And leave the meeting. So.
Fair enough. Okay. Gosh. 2 down. Oddly enough, my best pal did own that workshop in Oak Street, but he's long gone and there's no family involvement with it. But that's a snag with living in Newport, isn't it? Everybody knows everybody.
You're too popular by far, Charles. Okay, thank you very much. Any other committee member? Richard White, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that there's areas being lost to the library. Will it affect the loss of museum space? Will that affect the storage of artifacts? Because I know the museum's got quite a lot of items in stock, or will they have to provide alternative storage accommodation elsewhere? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Do you want to come back in on that, Stephen?
I can't answer the question. I don't have the knowledge of how this is going to affect the operational arrangements for the museum. So unless another officer that's attending has that information, I'm unable to help on that, so I'm afraid.
Okay. Thanks very much. Tracy Brooks. Tracy.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. On that point, there's not intended to be any change to the storage facilities for the library the museum within that building. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. It's been clarified. Any other committee member, or are you prepared to move to the recommendation?
I prepare to move to the recommendation. We will be saving considerable amount of money with the information station. We're all about budgets this year. So yeah, move the recommendation.
Okay. It's been proposed we accept the officer's recommendation, which is granted with conditions. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Neil, could you instigate the voting process, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jordan, please.
Yeah, for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Hollyoak.
For the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Berry.
Oh, sorry. Yes, for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
For.
Thank you. And yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And Councillor White, please.
For the recommendation. Thought you'd forgotten me again.
I got you at the bottom. Sorry, it's unanimous. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, committee. If we could move then to item 7 on your agenda, which is on pages 131 to 138 of your paperwork. It's application number 20-1126. The site is land east of adjacent to 14A Glencoe Bungalow, Bank Street, Newport. ward is St Julian's. The ward councillors are Phil Horain, Carmel Townsend and Holly Townsend. This application has been presented to committee as the applicant is related to council personnel that are internal consultees on some planning applications. The presenting officer is Joanne Davidson. Joanne, thank you.
Thank you. Yep, sorry, me again. I'll share my screen now. Okay, you'll be glad to know we're on the homeward stretch. So the application now is for the construction of 2 3-bedroom semi-detached houses with associated parking and external amenity areas. The chair has explained why this has come to committee. So the application site, hopefully you can just make out, is this area of land where my cursor is, and it's outlined in red. It's on Bank Street, so again, not a million miles from the last application I presented at Oak Street, and off Cullion Road, which you can just see on the aerial photograph here, leading to the motorway junction. The proposed site layout, as I've mentioned, is for a pair of semi-detached units that look like that. And you'll see from the officer report that a major issue for us is, again, design based. So I'll take you through these slides and try and explain our position over and above what we've already said in the report. So here we've got the floor layouts, which are 3-storey. This is a plan provided to us by the applicant to show the relationship of the proposed development when you're looking at it from Bank Street with existing residential properties on both sides. So on the one side, we've got a very modest pair of semi-detached brick-built houses, and then on the other side we have an anomaly really in the street scene of this bungalow. You can see it here on this street photograph, and there's the semi-detached units that form part of an estate that wraps around the site. So looking at it directly on then, so we've got the bungalow on the left there, and the semis on the right, and the proposed dwellings that I've shown you will go in the middle. And again, some other views of those. They're going to be visible, they're going to be prominent, so design is important. You'll see, if we go back to the street elevation, that the proposed units are higher than, I mean, we expect them to be higher than the bungalow, but they're also higher than the 2-storey semis on the right-hand side, which means they're also higher than the 2-storey semis that run round and wrap around the site on that estate. That is a concern for us. As I've said, it is a prominent site. They have, if I take you back to the block plan, they have observed the building line of the semi-detached units, so they're not extending any further forward, but the way these houses are designed and their overall height, and when I say the way they're designed, with this unusual asymmetrical pitch, this quite significantly set back 2-storey element with very elevated eaves. So again, looking at that in relation to the semis next door, it's going to look very unsympathetic in our view, quite dominant in this streetscape, and overall unacceptable. It's clearly been designed like that to accommodate a single off-road parking space. That's why we've got this setback, and therefore the resulting elevated eaves, asymmetrical pitch, is to enable them to observe the building line, get the parking spaces in, get the amount of accommodation they want into houses, and of course observe the required distances at the back that we expect. All in all, it's not quite working as far as officers are concerned, and it is not acceptable. So this slide is just setting out what we expect to see, and this is information contained in our own adopted SPGs on new buildings. So new residential development should harmonise with neighbouring buildings. That doesn't mean they have to imitate it, but it should harmonise and be sympathetic. Developers should pay particular attention to all of those issues here. I won't read them out. And there we have the summing up of officer concerns. This is all contained in your report, but I've mentioned the height. I've mentioned how prominent they are, how dominant it is. The impact of that side extension. I haven't actually shown you the rear elevation, which would be visible from Highbank, which is that estate that wraps around and envelops the site. I'll show you that now, because that is, you know, this is going to be the back of the units. Unlike anything else in the locality, even though there is some architectural differences, but that is again very unusual and will be visible in gaps in houses on the neighbouring residential estate. So all in all, Chair, we're not happy with this one. I should say as well, we did issue a late representation report on this item yesterday. It was specifically to deal with the environmental health late response. Environmental health are actually asking for a noise impact assessment pre-determination. We're taking a different view. We don't think that is required, and appropriate noise mitigation can be secured by condition, bearing in mind the location of this. It's on Bank Street, which is a secondary residential street. And so we haven't added that as an additional reason for refusal. The main reason for refusal is very much design based, and that doesn't change. And that's the recommendation, Chair, to refuse. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Joanne. Thank you. Committee.
Yes, Chair. I think I totally agree with what Joanne said. He's trying to make the best of what he got, I think, really, with the size of the land, and he's using the eaves and like the roof space to make that third bedroom. Like I said, which I think then that would sort of like, sorry, that's my doorbell going. It just makes it look overpowering and for the residents. So I totally agree. I think I would propose with a go to office recommendation to refuse.
Okay.
I'll second that.
It's been seconded. Does anyone wish to speak in? Councillor Watkins, sorry.
Yes, Chair, I'm a bit confused. The officers are refusing this really because the development doesn't look very good, and it's a 3-storey one, which is not in keeping with the adjoining properties. Yet we have just approved the one in Rogerstone, and the officers approved that development. It seems to be one is contradicting the other. Although I am in agreement with the officers here, but I wasn't in agreement with the officers in Rogerstone. The buildings there were 9.2, 3-storied high, which is out of keeping with the adjoining residence. This one is exactly the same in regards to out of keeping, or not in keeping with the residence, other properties close by, yet the two different results. One is approving, one is refusing. It's confusing me, Chair, where the officers get this from.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Does someone want to answer that, or is it more than just the height is being considered? No.
Chair, I can only I understand what Councillor Watkins is saying, and I'm about to say something we often say, and that's each scheme is considered on its own merits.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue with this one particularly, it's in very close proximity to existing units and is infilling a gap in a line of existing properties. And it's not doing it very well, in our opinion. The Rogerston case is different for many reasons, in my view, and so I don't think you can directly compare the two at all.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Councillor Watkins, for the question. Any other committee member? Because it's been proposed by Councillor Jordan, seconded by Councillor Guy, that we accept officers' recommendations. You prepared to vote?
Yes.
Graham Berry, sorry, Councillor Berry.
Right, I accept the officer's recommendations.
Yeah, okay. Could I then call on, thank you, Councillor Berry. Could I call on Neil to, oh, do you wish to speak, Charles?
No, I don't. I'm just getting ready to vote.
Oh. I thought you said you'd put your coat on.
No.
Could I ask Neil to instigate the voting procedure, please? It's been proposed and seconded. We accept officer's recommendation, which is to refuse.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ferris, please.
Accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Accept officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Hollyoak.
Accept the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Accept the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Berry.
I'll join that. I'll accept the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. We move then swiftly on to item 9, which is on page 139 to 145 of your paperwork. It's application number 20-1184. The site is 92 Durham Road. Proposal is a change of use of 4-bedroom dwelling to 5-bedroom HMO. The ward is St Julian's. The ward members are councillors Uraheim, Townsend and Townsend again. And the recommendation is granted with conditions. There are no public speakers. It's been presented to the committee at the request of Councillor Townsend, and the presenting officer is Joanne Davidson. Thank you, Joanne.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen. As the Chair has said, this is a change of use of a 4-bedroom dwelling to a 5-bedroom house in multiple occupation. The property is located on Durham Road, very close to Callian Road. Sorry, the orientation of this plan is wrong, but Durham Road runs in parallel to Callian Road. The main issues, as you know all too well now, committee, are parking, normally the key one, but also our SPG requirements in terms of percentages of HMOs within a 50-metre radius. The proposal is acceptable. There is no concentration in excess of the 15% required in the SPG. So we've dealt with that in the officer report. And therefore, at this point in time, I'm going to focus on taking you through the plans and the issue of parking again. So the existing floor plan, the proposed floor plan, nothing noticeably changing really, but as I say, we're going from a 4-bedroom house to a 5-bedroom house in multiple occupation. So here's what the property looks like. Again, just a standard mid-terraced unit. This is the property here, this one. with a small forecourt. So again, I've reproduced the Head of City Service Highways comments on this HMO as they are relevant to our considerations. And the Head of City Services has confirmed that the resulting increase in parking demand arising from this change of use is 3 spaces. And we can clearly see from the photographs that there are currently no off-road parking spaces and no opportunity to provide any. The applicant has submitted a parking survey, again, which we would expect, and confirmed that on-street capacity is maximum 88%, well, 90% with the proposed use, which is high. We acknowledge that. But the applicant has nevertheless demonstrated some capacity, and consequently Highways has not raised an objection. So let's take a look at some photographs we've taken during the daytime, just an average day on Durham Road. So you can see these photographs again are taken during the lockdown period. So you can see there is a lot of demand for on-road parking, but there's also the odd space. So there's no reason to disbelieve the parking stress shown in the parking survey that the applicant has provided. Just looking at an aerial shot from Google again, here's the property under my cursor where the red spot is. Some more photographs now just showing, these are actually taken from Google with the property here. And actual photographs now taken by the case officer on or at 4 p.m. Weekday. The application property is over here. Again, no one is disputing there's a lot of demand for on-street parking locally. But you don't have to go too far to find the occasional space. But they're certainly not plentiful. And no one would allege that they are. We also have evidence of people parking, I think Councillor Townsend's mentioned this before, on raised areas of carriageway or pavement or traffic calming. So, you know, it's clear to officers that there is parking stress. So we know from what I've said on previous HMO applications today and before today, that whether we like it or not, the planning inspectorate is, I don't know whether I should go as far as to say an open door when it comes to HMOs, but their priorities in relation to HMOs is very much, is it a sustainable location? Well, this is, because as I've already pointed out, it's very close to Cullion Road in easy walking distance. There's a local shop a stone's throw away from the site. And we also know that the planning inspectorate, rightly or wrongly, assume lower car ownership for those resident in HMO units, particularly in sustainable locations where they do have the option of not having the expense of running a car. It seems logical, but evidence of that may be lacking. But nevertheless, the planning inspectorate's conclusions on a large number of HMO appeals now that we have in Newport is relevant. We can't ignore it. So officer conclusions on this case are that we fully expected and fully understand the neighbouring objections and concerns regarding parking. And we fully accept that it's not plentiful all the time, but we know from previous appeal decisions on cases that are arguably worse than this one, that that is not a robust reason to refuse planning permission. As I've said, inspectors assume that car ownership in HMO properties will be lower, and most notably in sustainable locations just like this. And when taking account of those recent appeal decisions, the generally positive attitude of the Welsh Inspectorate to HMOs in sustainable locations, irrespective of whether they have off-street parking, the parking survey undertaken by the applicant and the lack of objection from the council's highway officer, it's considered that there is sufficient on-street parking in the area to accommodate the additional demand that the proposed HMO would result in without significant and demonstrable adverse effect on neighbouring amenity. And given the highly sustainable nature of the site, officers recommend that there is no demonstrable harm. So that is our conclusion, Chair. The committee's heard it before, I know, but officers recommend that this application be granted, subject to conditions for those reasons. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Okay, committee, any comment?
I'm stuck upstairs.
Yeah, Chair. Just a bit of a quick one. Did I know when the application comes through? But did the officers take into consideration that I think back last year we done that big massive development on Durham Road, the old Durham Road School? We had to have car park spaces outside because there weren't enough spaces. I think there was 9 extra spaces we had to find on Durham Road itself for those residents in those in that 3-storey flats they got on Durham Road as well. Did the officers take into consideration for that as well?
I can come in there, Chair. That development that Councillor Jordan refers to is complete and occupied. So the photographs that we've taken quite recently are photographs with, with that development complete and occupied. The development is actually a little way down Durham Road compared to this site. But certainly the evidence we've given to you in the photographs on the presentation are taken with that, site occupied.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carmel Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Joanne has been over a lot of these things about parking. I've pointed out that people park on the build-out pavements, but they also park practically on the normal pavement, which makes it difficult for prams and wheelchairs to get through. I've just made a few notes here. Lots of these applications are being determined by applicants' parking surveys. I would say that the council needs to be more vigorous in the standards set to parking surveys. Parking pressures on Durham Road are real and evident, and parked vehicles, as I've just said, are parked on pavements and the build-outs. We need to be careful about saying that access to public transport is a plus for this area, because St Julian's has seen a 30% cut in bus services in the past 10 years prior to the COVID outbreak. Catching a bus before 7 AM and after 6 is virtually impossible, and so bus alternatives are not as good as they are perceived. But this isn't the first HMO application we've had for Durham Road, and I think people are getting really tired of it. And what Jason pointed out, Jason Jordan pointed out before about the flats, that's causing a real problem with excess cars out on the road because there's little on-site parking. So I would just ask committee to bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. John Guy and then Charles Ferris.
Can I just say we got to start to consider why this is all occurring, why premises are being converted. It's all about the lack of social housing. It's all about the cost of housing. It's the difficulty in getting a deposit to get a mortgage. It's, that's how it's unfolding. It's a comment, really. It's not a question, but that's the reality of life, really. And the answer is, it's an easy answer, but that's why it's all occurring.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Guy.
Chair, Chair, in the previous similar application in Bachelor Road, weren't we told that HMOs provide high-grade accommodation for professional people? If that is the case, I think it's more than likely that professional people will have cars. So the idea that they won't be having cars, it seems to me a bit of a non-starter. And even if they're correct that it's lower, well, you could look at the numbers that we're giving permission for. It's bound to lead to a net gain in the number of vehicles there, more than say one vehicle per household, which we would accept. And again, on my travels yesterday, I went down Durham Road as well, and the parking there in the afternoon is pretty near impossible. So you know, and that's in a working day. So I would be against.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferris. Well, we've discussed the principle of HMOs many times, and this is just another example, I suppose. But the advice that's been given and the recommendation is granted with conditions. Is somebody prepared to make a proposal on this, please?
Yeah, I think Chair, I think Trevor wants to speak as well.
I do apologise, Trevor. I didn't see you on my screen.
You're not really, John, are you? Chair, page 145, general conditions. It says there the property shall have a maximum of 5 bedrooms, 5 occupants. Got no problem with that. But under that, it says to protect the amenity of adjoining occupiers, highway safety, and the interest of flood risk safety in accordance with policy GP2 and GP4 and the rest. But we've got no report from NRW in regards to flood risk at all. Is there any reason for that?
Okay, we'll ask the officer.
Sorry, Chair, another delay. My suspicion is, and I'm just trying to look at it myself, is that that reason is not correct and has potentially been carried over from another similar condition on another application. As Councillor Watkins has rightly pointed out, we have not consulted NRW or identified any flood risk issues in our assessment. So my gut feeling is that there is no flood risk issue and that has incorrectly been referred to in the reason and is something that we will need to update before that condition potentially makes its way onto a decision notice if the application is approved. Sorry, I'm looking through the report as I speak, but yeah, no mention. So I think, Councillor or Chair, that's an error and we need to delete that part of the reasoning.
Somebody's copied and pasted.
Yeah, I admit that does go on. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Watkins, well spotted. As a former chairman of planning, I would have expected you to spot that, and well done, you have. Is the committee prepared to make recommendations?
So sorry, Chair. Won't that need to be then done through Natural Resource Wales then for the flooding? Maybe a flooding survey done at all on that area then as well then. You know, even though it was might be put in there by mistake, and they do say it is known that area to flood. Would that
We've
be
just had serious flooding, Jason.
So wouldn't that be something that NRW to have a look into first before we actually to approve the officer's recommendation and get that survey done or something? Though?
I think, could I just say, I think if we're going down that track of flooding at this late stage, if the applicant appealed, I don't think that would stand us in good stead, because generally Natural Resources Wales do surveys on complete areas, and I'm sure this area of Newport would have been covered by a report at some time in the recent past. I'm looking at you now, Joanne, having made that statement.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah. What I'm doing, I'm looking at the application. If the application is located in a flood risk zone, we would consult NRW as standard. If it's not located within a flood risk zone, then we would not consult them as standard. So I'm just checking our file. Sorry to bear with me. To see if I can give you the confirmation you need on the flood risk issue. I don't know if any other officers are looking at this as well, they may get to it quicker than me.
Chair, it's those houses got flooded out round the back of the Durham Road School, didn't they? But that's a lot lower than Durham Road itself. Well, from the description of the location of the application, it's a fair bit higher.
Someone's whispering in my ear. It's not a C1 or C2 flood risk area.
No, and I've just got to that point myself as well, Chair. No, it's not within a flood risk area, which is why we didn't consult NRW and why the reference to flood risk in that condition is an error and needs to be removed.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much for the questions and thanks for the answer.
Go, we're making Joanne work for the money today.
Recommendation.
Okay, it's been proposed we accept the officer's recommendation. Is there a seconder, please?
I'll second
it.
Yeah, there we are. Jason
seconded. Okay. Neil, could you instigate the vote procedure, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ferris, please.
Accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, confirm the officer's recommendation, mate.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Accept the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Holyoke.
Accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Accept.
Thank you. Councillor Berry.
Accept.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Against.
Thank you. And Councillor Richards, please.
Accept the officer's recommendation.
So 8 for and 1 against.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Neil. Next item on the agenda is appeals decisions, and on pages 163, 164, they're for noting purposes. Is it agreed that we note those? Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for your stamina, forbearance in today's lengthy meeting. I wish you all a safe journey home and keep safe, although you're all at home, so that doesn't.
Chair, can I make a comment, please?
Thanks, Chair.
By all means, by all means.
Chair, over the past we've had problems in regards to voting and the raised hands. Yeah. When is this going to be put correct? You know, with the situation as it is, we have to go through the call situation every time. Got no problem with that, but it's far easier in regards to the message and the raised hand situation. Can we ask some of the officers, the Democratic Services, to look into it, please?
Yes, we're going to report this through to SRS because it is a common thing which has been happening. So we will report this to SRS to see if we can sort out Councillor Watkins.
Because I got an idea it happened at full council as well.
That's right, yeah, it did.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins, and thank you all for attending, and we will meet again soon. Okay, yeah. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers.
Sounds like the title of a song, didn't it?
We'll